Hello, hello, hello. If you can see us, if you can hear us, please do let us know, because otherwise we'll have no idea.
Yeah, it's been one heck of a day here at Lawhammer side of things, the Andy Law side of the Lorebeard part. I've been traveling all over the country. I've been seeing my daughter's graduation displays where she won a prize. My eldest won a prize for music and video game music design, and she's going to get something really cool and funky for that, apparently. So I was over there seeing what she'd done. It was pretty damned astonishing. There's nothing like seeing the next generation's work on game design to make you go, wow. There was everything from war games to board games to a whole lot of computer games, and I had quite a fun day. That was yesterday. Today, I had an allergic reaction to something, turned bright red, looking somewhat like a plum, and was almost considering going, maybe I shouldn't stream today, but it's turned around, and I'm back here, and all is good. So I want to bring up something immediately before we get going. I thought it was going to be Duarden today. It was going to be Duarden today. That was our intent, Devon. However, our Vilitch stream, which got delayed from a week before, which got delayed multiple times, and we couldn't do during the week this week, has been delayed for too long. So we've decided we're going to do it now, so it's done and it's out of the way. This Vilitch stream has to happen. So we're covering that one today, and I hope you don't mind too much, Devon, but we're kind of excited for this one because this is one we've been intending to do for what feels like 9 years now.
Yeah, and also I personally just wanted a little more time to do some more Duarden research. I wasn't feeling as up to snuff as I wanted to for that particular stream. So yeah. Also, it feels like if we're gonna do a dwarf stream, I should be the other version of myself, but we'll have to see.
Also, as we're gathering everybody around, I'm going to bring this one up because it was genuinely funny this afternoon. So I'll bring this one up. Andy, love you, but hate you for the Lawhammer patron chat shenanigans. So today, for the last month or so, there has been on the Lawhammer channels over on the Lawhammer Discord. So it's just the Lawhammer channels, not all the other channels that are there. Clear, if you mention any of the ruinous powers, bad things will happen to the characters in game. And that's caused some problems. As people randomly say things like, oh, do you think this means something about Tzeentch? And I put a little Tzeentch marker on. And it's been causing some issues. However, I also pointed out just today when I was about to get onto the train that one of the NPCs that everybody had been following had something on the card sheet they should look at. Indeed, it was marked as Chosen of Slaanesh. I went, hey, look at that. And everyone went and had a look at it, went, holy crap, what does this mean? And it turned into an enormous discussion about all of that I sort of led. And then I went over and went, hey, look, everybody's talking about that over there. They went running in, made loads of comments mentioning all of the Chaos Gods. And then somebody went, wait a minute. Did Andy do this on purpose just so that we'd, oh no! And indeed I had. I had set the whole thing up so that they would say a whole bunch of Chaos God names so that I could then make my PC's life hard when we did the next session. It was super mean, but also freaking hilarious. There was a point when we were on the train when Lindsay put a message up inside our Discord and said, why is Andy cackling maniacally and saying they fell into my trap? What have you all done? And then all the replies of, oh no, we didn't mean to. It was really quite funny. So apologies to all of you that I trekked, but because you did get the requisite number of likes, you did get a bit of secret information as well about the campaign and what that particular talent I was calling out meant and what it didn't mean. So hopefully that made it all worth it. So sorry about that, guys, but it was really quite funny.
Absolute bastard.
You were the one that realized I was being tricksy. Thanks very much for catching that, because it did make it more fun. Because if no one had noticed it wouldn't have been anywhere near as much fun. It was really funny. Got loads of messages afterwards with people going, oh, that was really funny. One person literally said, you've made my entire week, because I was sitting there theorizing and suddenly realized what happened. And I felt like I was part of the game. And I felt like I was making a difference. And I was like, oh, that's nice. So yeah, it was good morning over at this side.
You know, it's funny. I know there must have been someone that was watching the stream me, Vera, and Lindsay did about the Elf Gods, which we did an Elf God stream recently. It was super fun. We had a good time. And during the stream, Lindsay's like, I can't even say. We were talking about Zinch, and she's like, I can't even say his name because I'm scared it'll do something back in Lawhammer, even though it's like on a completely unrelated stream.
Yeah, I made it pretty clear that it was only in the Lawhammer streams, but I was rather amused when I heard that also.
And he's given his players PTSD about fictional, fictional deities.
Yeah, and the events from last Warhammer were so freaking enormous. Literal manifestations of the Crone Seer. All manner of crazy stuff occurring. The Hammer of Sigmar right at the heart of it and being passed over to someone who wasn't Karl Franz. My goodness, it's been exciting. They've even taken out a Greater Demon. Twice now. It's genuinely ridiculous. They had their asses handed to them, but good times. So yeah, it's been heating up over on that side, and it's almost finished. We probably have about 4 episodes left.
It's so exciting. That means I've got to spam catch up.
Yeah, good luck with that. There's quite a bit to catch up.
I know. That's the terrible part.
Yeah, fall behind once and you just lose it completely.
I got too into listening to audiobooks. Like, I've been enjoying Genevieve a lot. Genevieve has been it's super weird, but it's super fun. It is also like really violent and weird. It's funny reading the old book of the Vilitch people. No, you did beat us to it on that one. Though there is a good, I could think of an easy place for it.
Grim. Yeah, let's just move past that.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you all for joining us today, and let's get into super chats and stuff and then get going.
So we can get going. I'm looking forward to this one.
Grim Isaac, second Biofoot, Menfish. Is this what? Was there a fight I wasn't aware of? Also, Andy, how'd you find the God Invasion forum? I know it's pretty huge. Oh, did you peek in there?
It's really huge. Yeah, it's a big one. It's sort of running, isn't it?
Yeah. To say that it's sort of running as in it's sort of run away from us 10-fold is not. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, I think. Sorry, I'm sending. There we go. I forgot there was one last place I wanted to post that we were live. I've done that now. Joe Numbers, Vilitch arrives. Good morning from work, Gentle Beards. Yes, Lorebeards, the perfect accompaniment for working in the capitalist hellhole we all live in together. Woohoo!
I mean, you've really put a smile on my face with that, with the capitalist hellhole that we live in. So, yeah, it's going to be a good one, I think, this one. So, good morning to you in return.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, I got it now. Their reaction wars, yes, okay. Drowsy, what's going on, fellas? It's my birthday today, but I'm sick and I feel like trash.
Oh no.
You guys made it better, should be a fun one. Well, happy birthday, Drowsy. I hope
happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Drowsy. Happy birthday to you. So, yeah, happy birthday. I hope it goes well.
Yeah, I hope you feel better.
Yeah, me too.
Sean Schultz, when is Sotek's Slayer Oath happening? Andy, what are your thoughts on the new Warhammer Fantasy news?
Super excited, and we're going to be covering some of it next Tuesday. I'll say so. Watch us have a little chat next Tuesday. So yeah,
we'll be discussing Tiger Wars and all that stuff here just a couple days. And yes, for those of you that are like, where I was promised Slayer Sotek, where is it? I was just telling Andy before the stream. The intensity of what I'm intending to do makes it where there is no place that is like, oh yeah, you could totally come in and we'll do that. It is I found a place that was like, we would love to do that, but you have to come in for a consultation so we can like look at your hair and figure out all we're going to do and explain to you everything that we would need to do to make that happen. And then if we're all on the same page, then we shall go forward with it. And I was like, okay, cool. And my consultation is tomorrow. But it's like a whole meeting thing.
I shouldn't be so excited, but I am.
Yeah, it'll be a good time. Elemental Exposure, thank you both for the fun dreams. Well, thank you for the 5 months of support.
5 months. Thank you. That's so much. Thank you.
Joan Numbers, petition for a monthly Elf God stream with Vera, Lindsay, and Ryan. There's like 15 of them that don't have much, so it could last a while. So I don't know if they'll necessarily be monthly because we might do them more often than that or less often than that. But I do think there is a very good chance we will wind our way through most of the Pantheon.
The last one was, for me, particularly brilliant. Because I like sitting watching them in the background while I'm doing some work, because I often do some work with them. And every time they came to you know what we could do? It was something I was doing in Lawhammer. And I was like, what the fuck? What the fuck? The reason I avoid the elf god streams is because Lawhammer has such a firm view of all of the gods that I don't want to really stymie their creativity by just saying, I've got answers. It's this, this, this. And then go, okay. And if that's true, it's this, this, this. And we just turn it into an Andy show. And we don't want that. We want something that really gets all the ideas, not just from them, but also from the community, and pulls together something really cool. But the last one was so hilarious to me, because by the end of it, they pretty much almost blow by blow created the Anathema that we use in Lawhammer. And I was like, I could have just turned up for that one. Bloody hell. It was a good one, though. I do recommend it. Go check out and watch it, because they pull together a lot of lore that's quite separate and disparate and create some really good conclusions. And I don't just think they're good because I thought they were good already and had used them and had some of them passed by GW already.
If anything, that just adds to
that one, for example.
That just adds to that. There are crumbs that have been set in place, even if they weren't intentional.
Yeah,
also,
absolutely.
One thing I wanted to bring up really quick, because I just remembered it. I wanted to call out that we got good old Ashkol over on the Discord. Made y'all may remember we did an R. Ulrich stream like 2-ish weeks back where we made our own R. Ulrich, and Ashkol made some art like he always does, freakishly fast and freakishly high quality. And I just wanted to call it out because, like, damn, it's so good.
And if you don't know what that's about, go watch our Create an R. Ulrich stream. It was actually, by the end, freaking awesome. Yeah, by the end of it, I was just sitting there going, this is great. Thanks, everyone. We have built something amazing. And double thanks to Ashkal for trying not just his best, but going above and beyond the Call of Duty to create an image that totally did justice to what we'd done.
Alrighty there. We've got Promesia. Greetings to both of you. I really like Vilitch's model and story. Whoever made that up from scratch, well done. Such an outstanding job.
Well, we'll be diving into all of the details of that very soon.
Yeah, we will. It's for me, it's very funny seeing his model's evolution, because the first iteration of him was very different than the second iteration.
I'm not going to say it was goofy. I'm not going to say it was goofy.
Necro player. I recently thought of how similar Vilitch is to Teclis. The big difference is how their cultures treated them and how that shaped how they dealt with it.
Interesting.
It's an interesting perspective. There's a thing I'm going to talk about that is similar to what you're saying. I think I'm somewhat picking up what you're putting down, but very excited to get into that.
Yep.
Stephen Lucas saw the Total War Warhammer 3 animation of Barrier versus Portal battle of Bashiva versus Vilitch. Very anime as the tiger continuously tries to flank him. Naruto bridge arc. Yes, the bridge arc. Against the Mist tribe. But that's like one of the very few things I remember. Mist clan, whatever the terminology they use is. Bashiva is super duper fun. And speaking of Bashiva, Andy mentioned this earlier. I'm going to say it again because we've had more people joining us. We will be talking about her and all the new lore and stuff coming with her on this Tuesday. And also immediately after this stream. So like 15 minutes after, so if we end the stream at like 1 my time, at 1:15, I'm immediately going live with a Bashiva campaign where I'm going to be breaking everything down and like going into everything. So if you want to be on the front lines of that before me and Andy break into what it all means for the wider setting on Tuesday, then feel free to join me after the stream.
And let me just bring up this for Ash as well. It is fucking baller. Thanks very much for doing the art, Ash. Brilliant.
And thank you very much, Hawk. That was you that put the link in stream. I just assumed it was Hawk. Zero Daimu. So on Lorebeard streams, it sometimes feels like Zinj is the only chaos god who does anything, but on other places, there's an impression that it's the one who has the least stories about it. What's up with that?
It depends on which particular part of the lore you read. There is so much available that it's very easy, if you just dabbled into, say, 20% of the lore, you might end up just reading all the Slaanesh bits or all the Tzeentch bits and missing out on all the rest. I think most of the gods have had a pretty damn good stab at having not just stories and big characters and big campaigns, but broadly speaking, an equal opportunity to manipulate everything. So I don't feel that Tzeentch is the only god who does anything, and I equally don't feel that Tzeentch is the one who's got the least stories. I think all of them have got a lot, but it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking that the media that you've read is representative of all of the media available.
Yeah, and if you keep in mind that with Lorebeards, just because of the nature of like Andy's past writings and the fact that we are exploring all aspects of the setting, not just like the tabletop game, which means that the roleplay eats up a lot of our focus because it's where most of the lore is.
Yeah.
Tzeentch is by far the big bad of the roleplay game. Like he gets a lot of attention in the roleplay game.
He does.
So from that perspective, if you're watching all of Lorebeards, it's probably going to feel like Tzeentch gets more attention than anybody else. Which is funny because like I remember we had a meeting with Hawk like maybe a month or 2 months ago where Hawk had pointed out to us that we had not done a single stream just on a Tzeentchian character, other than I think like we had Galrach and then like that was like it, and like he had done the math on like everyone we could have talked about, and like Tzeentch was like way far behind, which was very funny. But if you like played, if you were someone that played like fantasy tabletop, but you only played in the later editions, you might feel like Nurgle was the most important one because Nurgle got Tarmakon and he got an end times book. Or if you're someone that only likes to follow along with like elf stuff or Eldar and all that stuff, you may feel like Slaanesh is the most important chaos god. It just depends on what your approach is.
Yep, agreed. So Zero Daimo, I sort of agree, but at the same point, it's all down to what parts of the lore you've bitten into.
The Pormesia, speaking of design, side topic I wanted to ask, why Games Workshop could not accomplish such sophisticated designs for orcs and goblins. They all seem the same to me.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're racist against greenskins at all. Sorry, Pormesia.
They're called greenskins.
Loosely speaking, I sort of disagree and also completely disagree. It's that they're so caricaturized that their faces move beyond what we as humans easily look for differentiations between individuals. And if you actually look at many of the models, they are vastly different from each other, but they're not vastly different in a way that we care about. Because the features that we look for as humans are not features that they espouse. We're not really looking at nose shape in the same way. All their noses are wrong. We're not looking at lip shapes because all their mouths are pretty much open with teeth bared, screaming most of the time. We're not looking at their individual hair shapes because they're hairless. So many of the key factors that we look for as humans, orcs don't display. So all of their differences, their shape of their ears, the slope of them, the way that the mouth meets the huge gaping maw that they have, their eyes and how much slant there is up or down or around, all of these details, which are different in most of the models, we just don't care about. We don't even see them. We're too busy painting them and making them green. So I would say that I agree because we as humans can't see the differences between them. And thus, if you want to look at it purely from a design point, they failed to make it clear the differentiations between one greenskin and the next. But I would also deeply disagree in that what they've created by its very nature makes it difficult for humans to differentiate between them. So I'm not sure how useful that is as an answer. I agree and disagree.
Also, we're going to need you to report to greenskin sensitivity training. Jonathan Scott, are curselings to curses what dumplings are to dumples?
The curselings and to curses, the dumplings are to dumples. Hey, Jonathan Scott, why not?
I don't know what a dumple is, but sure.
Neither do I. That's why I went, why not? Sure.
No time. Thank you for the 5 months. Of God's Rings or So Son would love to see more. There's at least one more coming with Nethu and probably more after that, to be honest.
Maybe we should make the rest of them all tied to things like Lorebeards getting so many viewers or whatever, so we can always have another target for people to follow. That makes sense.
Brendan Harold, Tommen, best big bro, always there for Vilitch.
We're going to be discussing that one, I think.
Parmisa, a request. Could we do a Champions of Chaos tier list stream from their stories to their designs, etc.? Thank you. Theoretically, yes. We would have to figure out what gets you on the list.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of them.
Because there's like literally dozens and dozens of them.
Yeah.
And there's going to be someone in the audience who's like, they didn't put Glump Shadow on the list. How dare they, those bastards? So, like, we'd like to do something like that. We could maybe do it by God, and that would maybe make it a little more reasonable. And then, I don't know, maybe we could have like a runoff at the end. But there's a way we could do it. We just have to figure it out. Okay, we've got 2 more. Gnivel, if gnomes get blessed, can they still use Olgu?
No. By the rules as they stand, no. If I had written all the stuff I wanted to do for gnomes, the answer would have been, it's complicated. But as it stands with the rules, no.
Watchdog 3079, Vilitch versus Echoed Hellbrass. Do you also think they measure up to another character-wise?
Vilitch should pretty much eat him for breakfast.
Yeah, Vilitch would, frankly, absolutely annihilate Echoed Hellbrass.
Echoed's fine, but he's not Vilitch.
Yeah, Echoed is more of a very curious character he's a very nasty duelist with a really cool gimmick weapon who, for some reason, leaves plants behind him when he walks places. But, like,
cool.
It's cool. It's a cool gimmick. But, like, the fact that, like, even though Felix doesn't technically get him, he gets killed by something else technically when he's dueling Felix. Felix Jaeger could have reasonably killed Echoed Hellbrass. I'll put it that way. Whereas Vilitch, absolutely not. Vilitch is a whole nother can of fish.
Yeah, it's going to need something special.
Got one more here. Hi, guys. Sorry I missed the streams. Derek, you never have to apologize for that. Really appreciate you dropping by. One question about the giant wolves. Considering how feared wolves were in Europe, how feared are they by regular people compared to greenskins and beastmen, etc.? In the Warhammer world,
so
a healthy fear of them.
Feared in Europe is an interesting term. They weren't that feared in the greater scheme of fear. It's more that wolves represented a whole host of metaphors, particularly when it came to the devil itself, particularly up where I come from in Scotland. And it's more that they were a great warrior of agriculture, whether it was crops getting destroyed, various animals getting hunted down, or whatever else it might be, particularly here in Scotland with deer and with chickens and with all the rest. They would just eat them. And wolves suck because of that. They're really good at it in the same way that foxes nowadays have got a similar reputation, but they're nowhere near the level of wolves. And they got hunted down to extinction. And a lot of the fear can be replaced very easily with genuine annoyance by farmers and similar who would hunt them down mercilessly because of the damage they would do to their agriculture. But you're right, they were feared, and they were often used in a whole host of moral tales, whether it was fairy tales or whether it is your classic, the classic tales that you got from the Middle Ages onwards, where wolves are often pitched as the bad guy because they were always the ones from the outside coming into civilization, a similar fashion to beastmen. Giant wolves, and because Warhammer runs with all of these myths, will take all of that on board. So the answer is yes. Almost certainly, as a metaphor, they are deeply feared, and they're also tied through to the goblins, largely because of Tolkien with the Warg Riders. They pretty much copy-pasted that idea over, and they copy-paste a great deal of the fears of the medieval into Renaissance into modern era, fear of the wolf as a metaphor rather than anything else. So if you're looking to figure out how to use them best in your stories, use them exactly like that, like almost a standing metaphor for things that people are afraid of that lie out beyond the periphery of civilization and are prowling out there ready to kill anything that goes too far beyond the boundary. In many respects, they are taking up much of the same area as beastmen, but they're the more natural side of it, not the chaos worry that lies beyond. It's the natural worry that lies beyond. So the answer is yeah, they're probably, in terms of Warhammer, very scary.
Yeah. And plus, there's a reason they're called giant wolves as well. Generally, Warhammer.
They're stupid big.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that there are normal wolves in Warhammer, but then there are giant wolves, which they're way worse.
Yeah, like the size of a horse are bigger. They're proper huge.
All right. With that,
we're going to get started.
Yes, let's go ahead and get into our intro.
Vilitch, Vilitch, Vilitch. We have been waiting for this one for what feels like a year, but we finally got here. After multiple cancellations, for one reason or another, we're finally at the point where we can discuss our favourite set of twins. Not Teclis and Tyrion. Oh, no. It's Vilitch. Oh, you want to say something there?
No, go ahead.
No, cool. It's Vilitch and his brother, Tommen. Where do we begin? Now, often when I do one of the introductions, I like to dive back into the past of Warhammer and explain where the characters came from and who created them and why. But when it comes to Vilitch, we don't need to go that far back. In fact, in the greater scheme of Warhammer, Vilitch is a newbie, a total newbie, and doesn't really arrive in the scene until we hit the 7th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means in terms of timescale, we're talking about the mid-2000s. So about 20 years ago from the point when we're streaming this out. Now, that sounds like an age ago, but when you remember there's only one edition to come after that, in terms of Warhammer, he's really young. Not only is he young in terms of his overall age inside the overall setting, he's also young in terms of his overall age as to how much of an impact he's had on this setting, because he's only around during the end times. But to understand why he exists, we do need to go back a little bit. In fact, I'm going to take you all the way back to 3rd edition Warhammer, which might be a bit of a surprise for many. And there's a reason for this. All the way back at 3rd edition Warhammer, Chaos was one gigantic army, taking a great deal, in fact, copy-pasting Michael Moorcock's version of Chaos over, including all of the mutants and the beastmen and the Chaos Warriors, all the rest of it. They copy-pasted it all in, dumped it into Warhammer, and made their own version of it with their 2 big books that were released near the end of 3rd edition Warhammer and for 1st edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, called The Realms of Chaos. And these 2 books presented an enormous new faction. Before that, the Chaos Army was just the same as any of the other armies, a relatively interesting, chaos-facing army. Skaven had an army. Bretonnia had an army. Empire had an army. Chaos now had 4 major Chaos gods and a whole slew of new troops that could do all sorts of cool things and loads of cool magical artifacts, loads of cool mutant rules. It was freaking awesome if you happened to be a Chaos player at the time. It made it too big, unwieldy, massive. But it was so freaking awesome that when we came into the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, the big box set, the first big box set, High Elves versus Goblins, for those of you who look back to 4th edition, they had a problem because there was so much there that they had to try and synthesize it down into a single army for Chaos, which is what it was before. And where all the rest of the armies in 4th edition got themselves a book, Chaos got a box set because it needed it. And in that box set were loads of cards for mutant rules, loads of new spells, loads of new everything, because Chaos rocked. It had a bunch of new special characters. Everyone was happy. A cool new Chaos book. And we got that for that edition. And Chaos was one of the most versatile armies you could get your hands on. That caused problems. A lot of people played Chaos during that era. Made it a popular army, but it also meant that the miniature sales were surprisingly unpopular. You might go, wait, what? But it's a popular army. Yeah, but there's so many different parts of Chaos. So many different parts of Chaos, whether it's demons or beastmen or minotaurs, Chaos Warriors, whatever. And each individual part didn't sell that well. The very first champion of Warhammer fielded a Chaos army. Good times as he went down to Games Workshop's head office. Life was good. That hits 5th edition. And in 5th edition, they realized they had too much. But instead of doing a box set, this time they released it as 2 books. The first book was just the Chaos Army, and they simplified everything down. And the second book was the Champions of Chaos, which was all their special characters for whether it's Beastmen or Chaos Warriors or whatever else it might be. So that's where we were as we move into the 6th, which is the edition before we reach Vilitch. And you're about to realize why Vilitch was created. Because in 6th edition, they took a look at everything that came before and they made an entirely new game. 4th edition and 5th edition, often called Hero Hammer, because they presented some extraordinarily good rules for building up heroes. But your characters became so important to your army that pretty much whoever designed the best characters won. which is why it was often called Hero Hammer. And most of the special characters had slots for magic items that you could just fill with whatever you wanted. So everybody tried to, appropriately enough for Lorebeards, outbeard each other by choosing the best possible characters. When 6th edition came along, they rebuilt the entire game and pushed down almost all of the special characters. And they went, here's a new build for Warhammer so that we've got a new balanced game that relies on units moving around. Characters make a big difference. Here's how they work. And we have a couple of special characters for every army list. That was great. For many, 6th edition is peak Warhammer. Some of the best rules that it has to offer. Now, for most of the army lists, this meant that this meant the previous army list had to be massively cut. Take, for example, the High Elves. There was a whole bunch of special characters that had come out for the 4th and 5th edition for the High Elves, and they got trimmed down to just like a couple or so inside the army list for 6th edition. But for Chaos, this wasn't a problem because they split Chaos up across 3 separate armies. 2, if I'm being honest, in 6th edition, but a 3rd one would come when we moved into 7th edition. And what they did is they split the Beastmen up into the Beasts of Chaos, and they split the Warriors of Chaos out into the Hordes of Chaos, and we had 2 completely separate armies now. They were no longer the same army. Beastmen really got shafted with this, and they got shafted not because their army was worse, it's because they had to do a lot to explain why it was a separate army. And they forgot to also say that they were important to Chaos. Where the Warriors of Chaos, they'd already established everything for ages. So the Warriors of Chaos side, they just basically carried on as they were before. The Champions of Chaos, look at them come. They're the most important. Archaon, who had first been introduced in the Champions of Chaos inside 5th edition, he's the king of them all. Let's go. The Beastmen kind of background-wise got shafted. Got a nice new army, but got kind of shafted. But because they split up all the army, they also split up the special characters. And for some armies, that was easy. Warriors of Chaos, split them apart. All the demon cards we need to worry about. And the Beastmen, there's not much there, so we just make a couple of new extra ones. We're done. Because they split up the Chaos army, they didn't lose that many special characters. But in 7th edition, they went in almost the flip direction. Come 7th edition, they went, the 6th edition, we're going to basically ignore a lot of what it was trying to do and do our own thing now. And we're going to bring in tons of awesome special characters. And for most armies, this was relatively easy. They just went back a couple of editions, picked up the characters that had been ignored, slapped them in, and then added an extra 1 or 2 to basically show why the new edition was cool. But for Chaos, this was a bit harder because their army had been fragmented into multiple parts. So they had to make up a lot more characters. And they did. Inside the Warriors of Chaos army for 7th edition, they kind of went wild and they made a whole bunch of new characters because they needed them to fill up all the new character slots that they were making for their armies. And one of those was Vilitch. He was created out of nothing because they needed something to represent Tzeentch. And this was the character that they chose, Vilitch the Curseling. In this case, it was Phil Kelly, as I recall, who did it. And Phil Kelly created Vilitch the Curseling to effectively fill one of the Tzeentch slots. And as we all know, Tzeentch is all about magic, so we made the super magic character. Dun, dun, dun! Vilitch. Now, before I go on to where Vilitch moved on from here, I've got something to say that might disappoint a lot of Vilitch fans. He was less than a nobody at the time. Because what happened during the 7th edition was they added so many new characters, and those characters were largely going to survive if lots of people used them, and they got cool miniatures, and as it turns out, not a lot of people collected just Tzeentch out of a Chaos army. A lot of people collected High Elves, and they just bought all the special characters. But you find with Chaos is they collected a branch of it, which meant the special characters did not sell well at all. Vilitch didn't sell. So Games Workshop ignored him completely. Come the 8th edition of the game, he's still there, so they copy-paste him in. And in 8th edition, he's copy-pasted over. And almost nothing changes. We get like a little army list entry explaining who he is. pretty much identical between the two editions. And we get a couple of small mentions in the timeline, but because he's so much in the present, it's like something happens in 2515, he's there, we're done. And that's it. And then it's going to change big time. Really big. Because something comes along that we, on this side, have frequently said we hate. Frequently said we hate. And that's the end times. And as we moved into the end times, Vilitch, as a core character for Chaos, became important. Now, you might go, why him? And the answer is because Chaos went against the whole world, which meant every single Chaos character was now important because they were in the minority against every special character that the game had to offer. And there's a lot of them. They even pulled out ancient characters from the Chaos Pantheon, put them off at the side. Dakala was wandering around End. Yeah. So Arbal the Undefeated, he exists somewhere. They even pulled them out because they didn't have enough characters. They didn't have enough to build a story around. You can't build a whole story around Archeon and make it exciting. He needs to have his generals. And every time Chaos does an attack, they have to have one for Tzeentch and one for Slaanesh and one for Nurgle. And Vilitch needed to be front and center because they had such a dearth of characters. So when we come to the end times, Vilitch gets his hour. And boy, does he. Loads of stuff involving Vilitch occur that speak to both the characters who he is, the character that he has become, and also his successes and failures leading to a very different version of him as we move towards the end. The end times completely changes what Vilitch is useful for. Before that, he was as minor as you can get. He's Bertrand Le Brigand level of ignored. Oh, yeah.
So I do want to add a note, which is that Vilitch did get one other major advantage, which is that the Archeon novel.
But that comes at the end times, which is it's all tied into the end times. Yeah, and it's great.
It's up to 8th edition because in 8th edition is when he gets his big update and he got a brand new mini and a bunch of other stuff.
Totally. But it's the Archeon novel and the end times that gives him everything. Before that, he's as minor as you can get. And he's smaller than Bertrand Le Brigand. He is a nothing. And then he becomes not just a something, but a huge something that becomes such an integral part of what happens in the end times. So this stream is going to do something that we don't often like to do. We're going to be discussing the end times. And we're going to be discussing Vilitch's impact on that and his lead up to the end times. Because if we don't, there's nothing to say other than his genesis and where he went to. Do you want to add something there? Oh, you didn't. No, sorry. I thought you were going to say something else. So, what does that give us? That gives us Vilitch the Curseling. I won't discuss any of who he is or where he comes from because that's what we're going to dive into. What I will say, though, is that he was a minor Chaos character that was added in the 7th edition of the game. He didn't sell that well. He didn't have that much to do. So, as it moves into the 8th edition of the game, he's just copy-pasted over. And as they start heading towards their version of the end times, they pick up that character, and in the novels, they do something with him. And then as those novels turn into pure end times material, that character bounces around the end times, popping up in more than one of the end times books until eventually that character has, you can decide whether it's his comeuppance or whether it's his change, whatever you decide that it is. And the end times largely finishes his story, sorta. And that is Vilitch, the Curseling. However, there is one thing that we always have to say on top of all of that, which is the end times isn't the end. Because after that, we have Total War. And Total War took up Vilitch eventually and made Vilitch a core character for Chaos. And in doing so, made Vilitch a favorite for many because unlike Warhammer, where sales matter, and he was winnowed into this tiny little faction, and he was a faction within a faction and did not sell very well at all. Inside Total War, he's just one representation of one faction that anyone can play, and he got quite equal billing with everybody else, and he became a fan favorite for many. So Vilitch becomes front and center, a core character for Warhammer in a way that he just simply wasn't previously. Now, we're not talking about certain undead characters that I don't even want to name for being unpopular and brought into the limelight, because he was a character that in the end times did have a big story. But he was a character that was, for many, one they didn't even know. Indeed, many older Warhammer fans got a bit of a surprise when he popped up, purely because they had no idea who he was, because he was that minor for many people. So that's what Vilitch was and what Vilitch has become. And today you're going to find out that his story is actually, as it turns out, more than, and I do stress this, more than enough to not just be a useful and important character for stories, but to actually be a central character for Chaos and Tzeentch leading into the end times. A character who has a great background, but a background that, because of where he was snuck away, very rarely had any opportunity to come into the light, where a character like, to hark back to one of our earlier super chats, Teclis massively dominated the High Elf conversation from the 4th edition onwards. Vilitch didn't until the very, very end.
Yeah, Vilitch is actually an interesting case that I, honest to goodness, think that the thing that allowed him to, that catapulted him up in a lot of people's personal views as someone that was, playing the game and living and doing Warhammer at the time, was that, to put it very bluntly, his 7th edition model was ugly. It was goofy as sin.
I'll go see if I can find it when you're talking.
Yeah, the artwork as well, because in the original version of Vilitch, he looks like a Muppet standing on the back of a Chaos Warrior. He looks very silly. He just looks like a little miniature sorcerer with like a cape or like a cowl sitting on the back of us. His brother being like, eh! Like, he was just really goofy looking.
Yeah, I'm going to get that picture so we can all see it, because it's actually hilarious.
Yeah, it's a very, very silly design. And then 8th edition was where they completely revamped him into that hideous tumor-like appearance where he doesn't even have eyes, and he's just this gross worm thing on his brother, growing off of his brother. And I remember when that model came out, a lot of people were like, holy shit, that's a cool design. To the extent that Vilitch himself, after the end times, which of course we'll talk about, gets retired, but his miniature, like the Curseling, actually gets brought back as one of the major minis of the Tzeentch line in Age of Sigmar, because it was such a popular design. People were still running Vilitch as like a generic character, so they gave him a newer model, which I actually don't like as much as the 8th edition one. But it's a very, 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 like, nowadays kind kind of just that gross little tumor thing coming off of a warrior's back. But that kind of does it for our intro section. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the remaining super chats. Yeah, there's OG Vilitch. Like, he literally just looks like a Muppet from like Sesame Street, just like on his brother's back.
It's not a great design. Of all the designs that Games Workshop have made, that one's not the best one. He was super goofy. And the one that replaced him was, for many, super goofy too. It's worth noting. I remember going to Workshop at the time, the Warhammer stores at the time, and people were like, yeah, nah, it's just a bit nah. But the actual idea, I do think, is really cool, and it's no surprise that it got used in an iconic fashion for Tzeentch through into Age of Sigmar.
All right, let me get through the remaining super chats here. Captain Magma, I always imagined it would be cool to see Vilitch and Kairos working together, since they both have 2 heads and 2 minds motif. So they're different. That we do actually see them interact in the end times, because Kairos ends up summoning Vilitch to help with an Archaon issue that we'll get into as we get into the story. But they're different. Vilitch is more like a singular mind that is powered by 2 brains, which we'll get into in a little bit, whereas Fate Weaver is more like 2 distinct personalities that share, like, a single mind that has been split, as opposed to 2 minds that have been unified into a singular one. Which we'll get more into Tommen and his situation with Vilitch as we get into it. Total War actually takes them in a slightly different direction, which isn't a bad thing. And it's designed to line up with what happens at the end times. Because the end times version sort of comes out of nowhere if you were reading the lore leading up to it, but Total War kind of back justifies it in a good way. Skylar Martin, squig handler who pacifies by telling his starling base, "Who's a little baby? Are you a little baby? Yes, you are." Squigs are shroom bulldogs. They are, basically. Though they're bulldogs that will eat your face, and they're always hungry. They are always hungry. The amount of goblins that get eaten by their own squigs is a very, it's a very high number. Archvolton, if the Chaos Gods are more of a collection of emotions rather than individuals, what about champions who receive blessings or even Archaon? A prophecy like the end times would mean an intelligence behind it, doesn't it? So it's worth
this is
noting,
a big question.
Yeah, it's worth noting. So the first thing I'll say is it's worth noting that the Chaos Gods themselves don't hand down that prophecy. Be'lakor created that prophecy. He manufactures it. And then he puts things into motion to make them come to pass. That being said, you're right, but you're also, I think, getting a little. So there's the classic thing me and Andy talk about, where it's really easy to try and rationalize the Chaos Gods of they are either X or Y, and if they function like Y, then why does X happen? Or if they function like X, why does Y happen? And the important thing to remember is that the Chaos Gods, if they're written well, they shouldn't fully make sense. They should be contradictory, messy, bizarre entities that defy understanding because they're chaos. So there are going to be times where I think it works having them come off like they have an intellect and a unique, like, full-on personality, and that they are individuals. But there are also a lot of times where I think it's important to show that that's not what they really are. And that's more of, that's people in the setting, people in the universe trying to understand them. And so they personify them so that they can make them make sense. But that's not what they're actually like.
Yeah. So my answer is going to be equally vague because it has to be. And that's that. Let's take each part of your one. If the Chaos Gods are a more collection of emotions rather than individuals. So are they a collection of emotions in the loosest sense? If we go with the Sea of Souls analogy, and over in the realm of chaos, all the souls that die in a particular way or who think a particular way gather in one place, and eventually that great big maelstrom of souls gains some form of sentience because it is conglomerated into something bigger. And when that sentience hits, a god is born. One of the great stories of 40k is the birth of Slaanesh, moving from just being a maelstrom of loose souls into an actual god. And they're actual gods. So that's the bit you're missing here. Are they a collection of emotions, all that? Yeah, sure. That's one way of trying to understand them. But they are absolutely gods. Do they then have what accounts to intelligence? The answer is sorta yeah, but not in any way that any mortal mind truly understands, because they're not individual people like you and me sitting down playing a game of chess with the other gods, having a little think about how exactly everything's going to work and then doing it. They are great, sprawling, multi-dimensional entities, much of which doesn't understand what other parts of it are doing. They are not simple creatures or simple gods that you can pin down with a simple label. They are beyond comprehension, and that's the easiest way to understand them, either as a writer or as a user of these gods, which means that they can be anything you want because they can manifest in all of those ways, and they can still be that loose collection of swirling emotions as well if you wish. The big answer to this one is it's really big, it's really complicated, and the more you try to pin it down, the less service you're doing to chaos as a whole.
Yeah, you should try and keep it weird.
Keep it weird.
Singemeister, Vilitch, good Lord of the Rings reference for anyone that has seen their tours. McGasley, Bashiva live when? After the stream. So 15 minutes after the stream ends ish, I will be going live to do Bashiva stuff. And then on Tuesday, we'll actually be covering it on Lorebeards. So if you're like, when are Andy and Ryan going to break down all the new lore shit? That's when we'll tackle that. Because there is a decent amount we have to go through. And then Chris, love Vilitch. In Total War, his voice acting and animations are perfect. An example of a character who's not the best of the best at everything, but very memorable. Yeah,
he's close though.
Yeah, he's close to being the best of the best. Total War did an incredible job personifying him, or like bringing him to life. Yeah, the voice actor for Vilitch is gross. He's such a little parasite, and it's perfect. So let's get into the actual story behind Vilitch the Curseling.
Tell me, Ryan, who is Vilitch?
Yeah, who is Vilitch?
Who is this guy?
It starts off with Games Workshop's favorite, which is that once upon a time, there was a village in a place somewhere in the world at a particular point in time.
In the north, it's mentioned as being up in the north.
Yeah. So,
although the names are definitely a choice for the north, but yeah, it's presumed to be Norska or one of the northern tribes.
Yeah, so somewhere probably up in the Chaos Wastes. But because he's not denoted as Norskin, and they're usually pretty reliable about in like 7th and 8th edition of saying if a character is Norskin or not. So likely not a Norskin, but from one of the other Chaos tribes. There is a particularly momentous birth that happens within this tribe, where the chieftain's wife gives birth to a set of twins. But they could not be more different. And you may go, oh, this kind of sounds like some other characters I might know, but it's going to take a very different direction. One of the twins was very large, very healthy, and very strong. And they're like, oh my God, this baby's going to be huge. And the other one was a weak, deformed, shriveled little ugly baby. To the point that one of the largest sibling clearly was taking significantly more of the resources during development than the little one. And after she gave birth, it is there's an interesting statement where it says that Vilitch's mother dies, but it doesn't say what you would expect of that. She dies during the trials of childbirth. Instead, it actually states that the greediness of Vilitch and his brother, more likely his brother, because he is much larger, requires a lot more resources, their demands on feeding, breastfeeding and stuff from their mother, that's what kills her, which is really
pretty grim.
Yeah, it's super grim and a really weird angle. I like it, but it's like a really oh my God, that's kind of horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, they sucked their mother dry.
Yeah, so mom is killed, and this doesn't appear to particularly upset chief. It's not like there's a son thing with a chief that's like, oh, I hate you both. How dare you kill my wife? Instead, he looks to Tommen, who is the larger baby, and says, I'm going to raise you to take my place. You are everything. You are a perfect child. And to Vilitch, oh boy, Vilitch's father, to put it very, very bluntly, was a terrible, 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 terrible man. He was
from the Northern Wastes. What do you expect?
Yeah, even by those standards, he's a horrible guy. He basically appoints Vilitch to replace Vilitch's mother, where it's noted that Vilitch, from a very young age, has to take up all of his mother's chores. He's not allowed to even try to become a warrior. He's denied the use of a weapon. He's denied any form of training. Basically, it's kind of interesting note of that he's denied all of the rights of that. And what you see a lot of Norscan, or not Norscan particularly, but Northman culture of the warrior's path. Instead, he's treated like a slave. And despite that, he still lives with his family, his father and his brother. His brother also absolutely hates him. And Tommen, whenever Tommen has a bad day or a bad moment, there's something that goes wrong or he just doesn't have a good time, he takes out all of his frustrations on his brother, and he beats him viciously. Vilitch is beaten and abused, and he basically exists to give his brother a way to blow off steam.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like the author had just watched 300 and had seen the misshapen character in that movie, who was born all broken and not allowed to be a warrior and was beaten on every day. Okay, what was that character's name? Ephialites? I can't remember. And beaten on every day. It's basically just that.
His lazy boy being like, that'd be a great chaos character.
Yeah. That one, yes. So they basically take that character and they say he's got a twin who's perfect. Yay!
Yeah, and this.
Thanks. Ephialtes.
There you go. So Vilitch's life is absolutely horrible. It is the worst life one could possibly be born into, and the only slight thing that he's allowed is that he is given to the village shaman to basically serve as his attendant. Now, this is where, if this was like the Tyrion and Tekla story, you might expect there'd be the twist of, but he might be very, very weak and he's getting bullied and beat on and stuff, but he's a gifted sorcerer. No. Vilitch is actually fucking terrible at sorcery. He is not gifted at all. He can barely manage the weakest cantrips. He has he does get lessons from the sorcerer, the shaman, but he doesn't actually have much of an aptitude for it. And his life just sucks. And this is his existence for at least 16 to 20 years.
Yep.
It's genuinely a solid miracle that he even survives as long as he does.
It's almost ridiculous that he survives as long as he does because he's so pathetic. And given the stories that we've got already of the northern tribes and just how bad they can be, there's a part of me that I remember when I first read this, I loved it for reasons that it didn't deserve. And that's because I'd had a character of Nurgle who had almost exactly this story back in the original Realms of Chaos books. And I'd made up a champion who rolled up randomly twin as his mutation, and a twin grew out of his back. So I'd already had this for my Nurgle character, and I'd ran an entire Warband Path of Glory style story for that one. So when I read this one, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. He's just like my character. I was one of the few people in the local area who really liked the character, even when he looked ridiculous like a Muppet sitting on top. And I was like, okay, so how are they going to take him to the next point? And the answer is, well, it's a choice.
Yeah. Now, it is worth noting that one of the holes in the story that actually would be really good to explore if you're someone that wants to use Vilitch for stuff is explaining how does he survive those 20 years.
Completely agree. Agree.
Yeah, of that, in most depictions we see of northern cultures, he should have died. Like, he either should have, because he can't basically fend for himself very well at all, he should have just been left to die. But the fact that he was kept in his father's household and wasn't ever like sacrificed or killed or struck down by some invading group or any other thing.
Why was he just killed?
Yeah, there's something in there about why they chose to keep him alive.
And you get this feeling that he's a pretty mewling, whining idiot half the time anyways. You get a feeling that he might actually be quite charismatic, able to get his own way by basically whining his way out of a situation. Please don't hurt me. Don't do it anymore. I'll do this. I'll be better next time, or whatever else. But even for the northern tribes, it's a bit much. If you're wanting to play with the story yourself, there is a very simple answer that pretty much fixes everything. And that's he's born in the Empire in the north. If you do that, they've got a more humane standpoint, but then you have to twist later parts of the story to make it work. But that would be one way of resolving it. If he's up in the north doing his thing, it seems likely he'd be killed. So whatever answer you prefer, go with it.
Yeah. And if you want, there are ways to kind of tell an interesting story. Like, you could make Tommen a more complex, kind of fucked up character, in that he loves his brother in a weird way, of that he wants to keep his brother alive, but he also gets unreasonably angry at times and beats his brother. And there's a very, very gross dynamic there, which unfortunately I've known a person like that in real life.
Yeah.
Like there's some messed up people out there.
People are complicated.
Yes, they are. So Vilitch, every night that he goes to bed, he basically prays to any and every power that will possibly listen to him. All of them. You could just imagine he probably has a list of every god he could conceive of, and begs
like
them
Benny
all.
and the Mummy.
Yeah, basically, yeah, and begs them all. Now, what's interesting about Vilitch, and is a very notable thing to hook onto his character immediately, is that Vilitch's prayer is not to be delivered from this. It's not to escape. It's not for personal strength. The thing that he always specifically wishes for is for him and his brother's circumstances to be switched.
And I think it's a super important part of the character to understand. I mean, really important, because if you're trying to make the fix of it and trying to figure out, maybe we could figure out a way for the brother to be perhaps a better guy in this, the instinct, if we go with this as his core reason for wanting to get out of the situation, it's his brother. He wants to dominate his brother. That's what he wants, in the same way that he's been dominated for almost 2 decades. He just wants to be the one in control. He wants to be the one who persecutes the other. So it really does suggest that the big brother is an absolute fuckwit, a truly awful person, with almost no redeeming qualities. And possibly the answer lies not in him having a complex relationship, in that he wants to, look after his brother whom he loves, but it's a complex. No, he hates him so much that he wants him alive to persecute even more. He is the one that is blamed for the death of the mother. He is the one who is pathetic. He's the one who polishes boots around the place because he has to. He's the sniveling little wretch that he has almost as a pet. And the only way that Vilitch can continue on, can survive at all, is to be that pet and to every night pray to the gods to uplift him and change their circumstances. And we all know who loves change.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting with Vilitch in this circumstance, it's a very vindictive wish. Westloose, one of the things you'll learn about Vilitch as we go through it, Vilitch is the most envious motherfucker in the setting. No matter how powerful he gets, no matter how far he goes, one of the things we'll keep coming back to over and over and over and over is he always wants what someone else has. To an obsessive, almost perverse degree. He is deeply envious.
Yeah, and when we get into exactly how much he gets, that envy is so enormously misplaced.
Yeah,
it could hardly be more misplaced. But the fact that it still drives every single one of his decisions shows just how broken Vilitch had been from his youth.
Yeah. So, as Andy suggested, a certain god one night just happens to pick up on one of these prayers, and good old Tzeentch, the changer of the ways, everyone's favorite fickle architect, and does what he does best, which me and Andy have actually talked about this in the past, that Tzeentch is not best seen as a god of hope, because a god of hope in this instance would have offered deliverance or escape or a betterment of life in a way that would have allowed Vilitch to grow. Instead, he is the god of ambition. And he comes to Vilitch and he sees the deep, burning, truly endless, because we'll get into that aspect. He sees in Vilitch someone that will never be satisfied. And oh, what a fun puppet that is to play with.
And always seeking further change, always wanting greater change. You can see why Tzeentch leaves him for as long as he does, but equally eventually picks him up. But one of the great mistakes of Tzeentch as a whole, and how many people perceive him, is that he's not the architect. They forget his primary point. He's pretty much the great architect. He is the one who builds for the next step of plans. His greater demons are all massive planners. They are detail orientated, and raising up Vilitch is part, as is always the case, of a bigger plan, because that's how Tzeentch works. So convoluted, so controlled. And Vilitch, you can see why, right from the top to the bottom, his character would appeal to Tzeentch because he is ambition almost made manifest in the most pathetic of forms, and one that is so pathetic that no matter how much bigger it gets, it can never be big enough because it will always see someone bigger and want more and want more and want more and want more. And he left him to the point that he was going to break, and then in he comes.
Yeah. So Vilitch falls asleep, and when he wakes up in the morning, everything has changed. He is no longer a sniveling little ugly wretch of a human. He is instead a hideous blind worm tumor thing that is literally, he's a parasite on his brother's back. But what Tzeentch functionally did is he fused them both into one body, which you can imagine if you were there, if you witnessed this event, it probably would have been super fucking freaky to see the two of them being like dragged into the same space and then melded into one being and all that nonsense. But he is fused to his brother Tommen. And what Tzeentch does is he combines everything about them. So Tommen's strength and Vilitch's very meager strength become one. Vilitch's intelligence and Tommen's intelligence, which Tommen, contrary to what he might seem like nowadays, Tommen was not stupid. He was
he's a Chaos Warrior.
Yeah, he was a very successful Chaos Warrior at that. Yeah. Like Tommen was basically like well on his way to the path to glory. And Tzeentch just completely co-ops that because Tzeentch just loves doing shit like that. And likely removed a player off of the board of one of his brother gods. And everything about them is mixed. But Tzeentch, because he's Tzeentch, takes Vilitch's very meager appetite for sorcery and it just accelerates it to 11. Like Tzeentch, and this is the thing I love about Vilitch, is that if Vilitch was a character who had a redeeming quality, which he isn't, I want to be really clear about that, but if he had a redeeming quality, the story should have been that he gained the capability to do the things that he always desired to do and that he'd been studying to do, but maybe he wasn't capable of it. Instead, Tzeentch just comes to him with a silver platter, says, here is power. Here is incredible, you go from being a 0.000001 sorcerer to a level 4 sorcerer overnight.
Okay, and let's just be as blunt as we can be about how powerful he becomes, because we have to be blunt about this. Beforehand, he's doing minor, tiny cantrips. For those of you who know the role-playing game, he's basically doing petty magic. It's the lowest of the low, and that is his peak. All he can do. And that behind the snack passed, Morsley Bros, the fusing occurred, and he was now in control of his brother Tommen's body, and he himself had been gifted with all of Tzeentch's magical might on the material realm. He was made the most powerful sorcerer of Tzeentch, pretty much, in the world. That's how much he got given. Now, different versions of the rules explain this in different ways, but loosely, in most versions of the fantasy battle game, you get level 1 to 4 wizards. He's made a level 4. And you get access to the amount of spells, depending on which version you've got of the game, but normally the amount of spells that your level is. So if you're level 4, you get 4 spells. He just gets all of Tzeentch's spells. And he's at the peak level of sorcerer. He just gets the lot. Everything you can possibly have, he is given. He has made the most powerful sorcerer pretty much in the Chaos Wastes. It takes a greater demon of Tzeentch to come along and say, hey, you're the equal of me. Maybe better. What the fuck? Tzeentch! What? Hey, dude, this guy's shit! How come he can do all this? Oh, hey, stop! And this is a pathetic, mewling, not that intelligent, not that clever, but spiteful and needful and desperate entity. His stats are rubbish in the Warhammer game. His leadership's only 8, which for various games is normally also equates to how good they are at magic. His is pish. He's basically not that much better than a normal Chaos Warrior. His overall abilities are not great. However, he has been given enough magic to drown a world. It's amazing what he's been given. And then that is set loose to do whatever it wants. And strangely enough, change is going to follow.
Yeah, so this is one of those scenarios where you take basically a fairly undeveloped human lad who's lived nothing but misery and hate for everything around him and wants nothing more than to lash out at everything that exists to make the world feel as bad as he has felt for his entire life. And an entity walks up and says, by the way, you're God now. Have fun. And that's what happens. He walks out into his village and he immediately starts killing everyone. And it says that he literally goes off on a maniacal spree of joyful murdering, where he's just blasting everyone with magic. Anyone that tries to stop him, Tommen's body just breaks physically as he's exulting in all this physical might that he didn't. Once again, imagine someone who is so weak they can never defend themselves. They can never do any of that. If you've seen Megamind, right? The whole thing with Titan, how Titan becomes such a fucking dick the second he gets enough power to start bullying people. And he murders everyone, with a few exceptions we'll get into in a second. And it's said that the massacre he unleashes is so bad. And the thing about Vilitch has two forms of magic he really likes. We'll talk about the second one in a second. But the first one, Vilitch's favorite form of sorcery is flesh melding, where he blasts you with the fires of Tzeentch or a bolt of change, and it turns you into something fucked up because he thinks you deserve that, because that's what happened to him. So now you get to feel what it's like. And it says that his village, the streets run with melted flesh like wax.
Melted flesh like wax. Yeah, he goes to town on them. And yeah, nothing survives. And I think it's worth noting that we're probably not dealing with your average Empire village. I know we discussed we could use that as a starting point if we wish, but that's not what it is, because we know what the truth is here. This is one of the northern tribes. Okay, we're dealing with almost certainly shamans, chaos warriors, all manner of... Just take a look at a chaos army. They've got a chunk of them right there, and he takes them all on by himself and absolutely wipes the floor with the lot, because he's not just given insane power, which of course he is given. He's given the complete ability to channel it effectively. And that's the part that makes him terrifying. He is, right now, one of the most powerful sorcerers in the world from nothing. And he has the complete ability to channel that power in any way he wishes. And his first wish is revenge on everything. And he takes it out with maniacal glee. He is a terrible, awful entity that just wipes everything out. Now, typically, what you'd expect the next part of the story would be, and he rises and builds a war band and leads it on and eventually realizes he needs to bring these people behind him so he can gather power. He will lead them like the next leader. Nope, that's not Vilitch's way.
Nope, and we'll get into that after we get caught up on Super Chats.
Super Chats! And again, thank you very much for your Super Chats. They're always appreciated. Thank you for supporting the channel.
Yes, thank you very, very much. We really do appreciate all the support. Joe Numbers! Always a Magic Chaos is 20 different people taking the same turn at a game of chess. Each goes, undoes the last move, then does their own move. That is a... Yeah,
and three of the moves somehow are still in place at the end.
Yeah.
Chaos.
With all of them being like, I totally meant for that to happen the exact way that it did happen. Archvulcan, as an Inquisitor, I approve of the vague answer, but remember, I am always watching. we're inquisitorially approved. Stephen,
I love it.
Getting to it later, but Vilitch versus Sale as a character. Vilitch is so much stronger within Sale, it's terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, if it was just down to the pair of them going toe-to-toe, this would happen. Sale would run and try to get away, because Sale is clever. Sale's almost the opposite of Vilitch. Vilitch isn't clever. Vilitch is spiteful, horrible, and greedy, and desperate to be more than he is. Sale is on the flip side. He's really clever. He knows how to scheme, and he's ultimately a politician. He knows how to get the best out of everything around him. Vilitch cares fuck all about what around him has to offer other than what he can dominate out of it.
Yeah, Sale is the kind of person that would be very good at manipulating Vilitch if they were part of a larger horde. But if like Vilitch was the top dog, Sale would be getting the fuck out of Dodge for reasons we're about to discuss a little bit. Vilitch, even from a chaos perspective, if you are a chaos person, you're like a chaos lord. Vilitch is one of the scariest motherfuckers in the North because of what he does to people, which we'll get into in a little bit.
It's not good what's about to come. Vilitch sucks.
He does. He's terrible. Grim Isaac, Tommen over Vilitch, loving but brutally controlling. It's funny. There's a manga out right now called Kagurabachi that's going to be getting a anime here soon. Beautiful art. It's a beautiful story. I love it a lot. I'll send you a thing for it later, Andy. But it has a character in it who I suspect is a way you could personify Tommen, where he talks a lot like he loves his little brother as one of his character traits, but he is grotesquely violent and abusive. Like he is a grotesque character. I'm
going to read that later.
I think you'll like it a lot. It's actually quite
good.
Mocafello, surprise! You're an Orskin. You woke up with the mark of Zinch and no clue how or why you got it. What do you do? Also, thanks for making Sunday chores so much better. This is where my initial answer would be shrug, die, I guess. But
okay, so you've got the mark of Zinch, which is a good start. At least you're blessed by the gods. And one thing that I think this character does that is actually a weakening of chaos in some respects is it makes his prayers worthwhile. It makes Zinch, from his perspective, the good guy. And this is something that's easy to forget when we're dealing with the northern tribes and when we're dealing with the hordes of chaos in general. And that's that the supposedly capricious gods of chaos are to them forces of, and I'm going to use this word uncarefully on purpose here, good. They, in their capricious nature, can bring about positive change to their lives. And as far as Vilitch is concerned, that's exactly what has occurred here. He has got everything that he wants. Zinch is, from his perspective, a good guy. And remember, in our own heads, we're all good guys. And even when we're doing something that we consider to be possibly bad, we self-justify typically. He's kind of insane and kind of beyond caring about self-justification, but he does feel like he deserves this. This is his right, and Zinch has given it to him. So in this one, Zinch is our good guy now, apparently, because we're worshippers of Zinch. So, first job, pray to Zinch.
Yeah, honestly,
come on, Zinch.
The thing that I think would happen to me, at least if I was in this scenario, is I would set about trying to fix things, trying to heal the world, trying to fight against the fate that I know would be coming to the world of everything being destroyed. And in doing so, I would probably end up being a perfect puppet because I would be using the scenario that Zinch put in front of me, being that, I have the blessing of Zinch, which means I can use magic according to most rules. And also I can use that as a manipulative force to be like, look, I'm blessed by the gods. I bear the changer of the ways mark. So people are going to gather to me. And even if I'm trying to objectively do nothing but the right thing, the problem is I am literally at the focal point of
You're
the god.
Part of the problem, Ryan.
Yeah, I'd be screwed.
Yeah.
Even doing the best thing I could possibly think of to do, I would be screwed.
And given how much we know about the world in general, we would be pretty tempting people to bring on side for Zinch. And knowing what we know, Zinch is going to win. So it does make it particularly tempting to stay on that side. And then when you look at what happens with Age of Sigmar and you find out a bunch of people who've fallen to chaos can come back, you're left going, well, really, is chaos that much of a problem anyway? Yeah. They've weakened chaos so much inside the Warhammer background that the falling to chaos is no longer that's it, you're fucked. option. Hell, all the elves get eaten by chaos, and what happens? They all come back out again in Age of Sigmar. The whole concept of falling to chaos is sort of ruined by the newer lore, and Vilitch is almost a prime example of what they've done to weaken chaos, because Vilitch shows that chaos is right, chaos is helpful, and chaos can do things, and as long as you don't cross them, you are going to be exalted. Chaos is not so bad, so thanks for that super chat, because it gives us an opportunity to say, hey, maybe chaos is right.
Yeah. Zinch
how did we get here?
Yeah, I know. Zinch is probably how he survived in the first place, letting the fruit ripen until it's perfectly rotten. Yeah.
I see, Joe Numbers, I think this is a good story to take, and the subtle manipulations of the ever-changing Lord of Chaos to create the character that is Vilitch seems a good answer, but you'd need to, if you were writing this, make it subtle and clever, or it's just going to look like, why is he not dead? Why is he not dead? Why is he not dead? You need to have good answers for that in whatever you decide for his background.
Yeah, a way they don't run with this story. I want to make this very clear. But one of the ways that if you were dealing with Vilitch as like a major antagonist, that would be a good way to fuck with him psychologically, is if you could prove to him in some fashion that Zinch's curse is what made him so weak and pathetic and fragile in the first place. That Zinch literally did that to him in the womb just to set him up for this. Which, whether or not he'd even care is debatable. I think he would, because he's that petulant. But we'll get into that.
Yeah, he's a child.
Yeah. Parmesia does not always want to want more tend to corrupt him into Slanesh's pathway. If it is so, then why Slanesh did not answer to such a champion candidate? So
no, more is not excess.
Yes.
That's two very different things. Slanesh is excess, too much of a particular thing. He just wants change of circumstances. And he wants, when he gets there, he wants another change because he wants more. He wants another change. When he gets to the top part, he doesn't move to excess. He's just always looking enviously at what other people have on the other side. He's not really a Slanesh trope. He's getting close to it in places, but he is deeply a Tzeentch trope.
Yeah, there are ways you could tweak some of what happens to make him into a notably Slanesh-y character, but I very, very much agree with Andy of that. He has kind of a unique shield, if you want to put it that way, against Slanesh, or something that would disinterest Slanesh, and that for Vilitch, it's never one thing is enough. He's always looking over at the grass is greener on the other side, which is actually a way to kind of stay ahead of Slanesh in a really weird way. But his mindset puts him at odds for much of what Slanesh tends to offer. Yeah,
he's not going for excess and losing himself in it. He's looking for more. He's looking for the next step, the next step. He's constantly on that path towards the next step upwards, which is not quite the same thing.
Yeah, funny enough, emotionally and mentally, Vilitch and Sigvald are very, very similar people. But yeah. Sigvald is those.
We need to do Sigvald.
We do. We
need to do Sigvald. I mean, we have we done any Slanesh characters? Did we? Oh, we did Takala.
Yeah, we did Takala. Yeah,
we did Takala.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah. Timo Nami, since their minds got fused, could the Curseling's endless ambition and envy speak also to Tommen being much like his brother in these aspects? That is you could make that argument.
Yeah, it's an argument. Their minds being, I mean, it's given such short shrift in the description, you could take it in almost any direction. But ultimately, as we're going to go on to, I presume, as we head into the end times and where it goes, Tommen has a different set of needs and outcomes too.
Yeah. So
I would probably look to try and give the two characters separate motivations as to how they work.
Yeah, so Total War shows us that the answer to this is technically no, because the brothers do have their own distinct minds. It's just that Tommen's is deeply suppressed, which is, to be clear, that is a bit of a lore change from how it's originally written.
I agree, and it's a change, and I think it's probably a good one because it speaks to a more interesting character, and ultimately that's what we want from our special characters. We want interesting characters that we can discuss.
Yep. Hawkodley, birthday is a Tuesday in September. Time to think of a topic. Well, you better get on that.
You better get on that, Hawk.
Watchdog 3079. I think more that chaos isn't wrong or right, but fair. It isn't, but it's very good at tricking you into thinking it is.
Yeah, I think Watchdog, that this is one I would actually disagree with relatively hard. Chaos isn't fair. If it was fair, it would uplift everyone that was deserving according to its set parameters. It does not. If it was fair, Tommen would be exalted as well. He is not at all. And Tommen is super successful. He is subsumed by his pathetic and absolutely incapable worm of a brother who has done nothing to deserve anything. That is unfair by its very nature. Now, you might go, but for Tzeentch, it's sort of fair because it's showing change. Then we're just looking at lots of ways to pull things apart. But ultimately, all of the Chaos Gods are pretty much, to put it under, they're capricious. Sometimes they appear fair, sometimes they don't. What we can say for certain about the Chaos Gods is that ultimately they will win, and joining them is arguably the correct thing to do.
Yeah, I think of the whole Harvey Dent speech that he gives in the second Batman movie where he's like, it's about what's fair, like that whole thing. That is very much how someone like Vilitch would absolutely argue chaos is fair, of that, people like him deservedly were raised up, and the people that he kills deserve to die. It's fair. And me and Andy would be sitting there going, Vilitch are full of shit from a distance.
I mean, Vilitch is like wrong. Just wrong.
Yeah. Stephen Lucas, Bloodborne, pray for eyes on the inside, turns your group into a giant rotten brain with eyes. Sympathetic in spirit, turn everyone into a werewolf. Yeah, gods are funky.
Yeah, they're special people, those Chaos Gods. And often, one of the core components of the original Realm of Chaos books was that the gifts that you got and the mutations you got were random. That was the point. Yeah. And that meant that sometimes they were perfect. And they were everything you ever wanted. And Vilitch gets risen up as effectively a greater demon of Tzeentch in power in the material realm. A master of magic, because you could roll that on those random tables. But what we forget is the other 1,000 idiots wandering around praying to Tzeentch and getting things like an eyeball up their anus. Not exactly useful, and they get to watch everything that's passing through. Not the most enjoyable of mutations, because the mutations are utterly random. The gifts are random, but sometimes they don't appear random, and it's that not appearing random part that makes individuals believe that the Chaos Gods are not capricious. But on top of that, the Chaos Gods do exist, and they do have a form of intellect, which means sometimes they specifically call out individuals and take them and do things with an individual. And all the rest of them mean nothing. Everything that occurs to them is random, but to a few key individuals, it's not.
Yeah. So back to the story of Vilitch. You may be wondering about that whole thing we were mentioning earlier of like why, if you were the biggest, baddest Chaos Lord in the Waste, you would still want to avoid this guy like the absolute plague. And it's because, remember how I said there are two forms of magic that Vilitch really, really likes? The first being that he wants to, that he's very good at like blasting people with change and turning them to horrible mutated forms. Well, the other form of magic that Vilitch mastered immediately, because Tzeentch just allowed him to, that he uses frequently, is domination. Yeah. Vilitch, so when Vilitch kills everyone in his village, or his town, empire, capital, whatever it is, there are some people who were out doing warband stuff, or maybe they fled, or whatever it may be.
As I remember, it's his tribe that lies beyond, because this is just one settlement of the tribe as a whole, and he goes out to the rest of the tribe, and what he's about to do next, he does to all of the entire tribe. So not just one settlement, or the next settlement, or the next settlement, all of them. Hey. Yeah.
So what Vilitch does is pretty much creating a spell that mirrors what he's doing to Tommen. He unleashes a spell that allows him to basically just shatter somebody's mind and turn their body into an extension of his will. It's like a living form of like almost what you think of with necromancy. Except for those people are alive, and based on what we know with Tommen, they're still aware. But he just breaks all of them, and he turns them into, as Total War properly denominates his faction, the puppets of misrule. And he has an army that is made up of just puppets. And that are, once again, still alive, still vaguely aware. And this is actually expressed very, very well if you watch his Total War trailer, where it's literally just these people with like eyes glowing that are just kind of walking, and then they just get killed, whatever. And that's why his leadership fucking sucks, because he's not a leader. He's not a good strategist. He's not a gifted tactician. He just dominates the wills of people and just basically just uses them to be like, go flush out my enemy or go kill them or whatever. And they have no choice but to obey.
Yeah. So this is where I think it's worth taking a brief pause to say, well, what does this mean his power level is like? Who is this guy? And we have the answer written into his description. And that is, he's the most powerful sorcerer of Tzeentch there is, because he's got all of Tzeentch's magic. Now, you might go, wait a minute, does that mean he can do all of the spells that exist? Because all the spells are attached to Tzeentch, aren't they? And the answer is, pretty much, yeah. Now, in the battle game, he's given Tzeentch magic, because that's the easy way to resolve it. Tzeentch magic doesn't let you do anything that he's currently doing beyond changing people by throwing out bolts of change. That whole torrent of flesh, yeah, he could do that. The domination of everyone, no, he couldn't do that if he only had Tzeentch's magic alone. What he's doing now is using other spells, the winds of magic as a whole, which he has broadly mastered. He can do everything. He is an enormously powerful sorcerer. A little bit like how high elf sorcerers who can do high magic can also channel all 8 winds of magic and do spells from all of them. But the actual rules for high wizards are you can do high magic.
Yeah.
Somewhat similarly, Vilitch uses Tzeentch magic. That's what he does. But if he was a character in the broader world where you were to make it up, say, for fantasy roleplay or a game where you weren't constrained by game balance, then he would have all 8 winds of magic, dark magic, and chaos magic, all just sitting there wrapped up in one gigantic ball of awfulness. And at the head of an army he has complete control of. Most spells in Warhammer allow you to control a unit at most at any one time. He is controlling thousands with but a flick of his wrist. He is that powerful. And this is something that's super easy to forget when we look at Vilitch, because we just look at him as a stat line in a book or as a character in a game. And we don't think about what it actually means when you read what he can actually do. He is the most powerful sorcerer in the North. He is horrendous. And all of the spells, of which there's far too many, he has at his beck and call. And he just reaches out and takes whatever he wants. And it's not until he meets something that he can't influence that he really starts to get antsy. And before that, he does destroy a good bit of Kislev in the north, because who doesn't like to? Around about 25-15. Let's go into Troll Country and start using my big army to zip zap zone. Bing, bam, boom. Die. Because he can. He's a nice guy, right?
Yeah. So Vilitch.
Vilitch. I love him.
Yeah. So Vilitch and the Village people. Haha, there you go. All of his mind control puppets, who once again are, keep in mind, like, there's few fates that you could imagine more horrific. Of that, remember that he is a very vindictive, spiteful little bastard who is using these people to fulfill his every possible desire, and they exist only to entertain him. He is, if you've watched Lawhammer, the roleplay game that Andy runs, or if you've ever been to any of our streams where we've talked about him in the past, he is literally the worst fucking nightmare of the Grey College. Someone who has mastered Olgu, but doesn't have any of the moral boundaries that are supposed to prevent you from turning into basically the worst fucking thing imaginable.
Yeah.
Of like rewriting people's memories just for fun, changing people's personalities just for fun, doing just all sorts of horrors. And this all builds up. So he ends up attacking parts of the old world. The only very notable thing he gets before we get into kind of his big story, the only time he shows up with the timeline is he gets circa 2515.
Yep.
When he attacks good old, Zeskagrad? TZE Kagrad?
Zeskagrad? Sure. Zeskagrad.
Yeah, which sounds very Kislevite. It's probably in Kislev.
It's a Kislevite town.
Yeah.
Up in the north.
Yeah, he goes there and unleashes more of his horrific magic. And you may go, oh, Vilitch, what'd you get up to this time? Which is that Vilitch burns the village with a form of fire that, he's said to have such a good time doing it that his laughter echoes over the village. And the form of fire that he unleashes is so fucked up that all of the people burning to death cannot help but laugh along with him.
Yeah, he's totally wrong. This dude sucks. Not the way of putting it. He sucks. And this is, interestingly, pretty much where we stop for all the lore from the battle game before we start heading into the novels and into the end times.
Yes, kind of.
Pretty much. And this was everything that he was given. Now, for all, we have built up a character that looks terrifying. You got to remember that at this point inside Warhammer's lore, this is what happened. 7th edition, here's a character. He killed some Kislevites in 2515. 8th edition, here's a character. He killed some characters in 2515.
Yeah, 8th edition did a thing where they wanted Archaon to feel big, so they expanded Archaon's myth and added in almost all of the special characters. Like Vilitch shows up, Valkia shows up, like a bunch of special characters make appearances in Archaon's saga. But it's part of the 8th edition build up to the end times.
To the end times, because we get the first, is it Lord of Chaos novel? Can't remember. Archaon. The first one.
It's Archaon is the first book. Second book is Lord of Chaos.
Yeah, that's it. I can't remember which order they are. I read them a while ago. Yeah. And this is where they start the proper build-up. And Vilitch really does get a lot of screen time in this.
Yep. So we'll go ahead and get into it. So Archaon is off doing Archaon things. And Archaon, for those that don't know, Archaon has been running around for almost 200 years, gathering up the 6 artifacts of the Everchosen. And it builds up to Archaon gets all of them relatively fast. I think he gets 5 of them within like 50 years. But the 6th one, the Crown of Chaos, he cannot fucking find. He can't even find a hint of where it is, who has it, how to get it. And Archaon basically wanders around lost for over a century of not just chasing loose ends and not finding anything. Until one day, he's got a big fleet that, according to the novel, he actually has a stolen Black Ark. His Black Ark was actually destroyed by this point. So he's actually on a different fleet. But he's on this big old fleet wandering around the world, and a big storm shows up. And this huge, bizarre, out of nowhere storm blows him over to the shores near Bretonia, where Vilitch is waiting for him. So once again, Vilitch uses a very different form of magic, very Azerite, where he conjures a massive storm that just brings Archaon to him. He summons the Everchosen. And Vilitch is there and says, hey, Archaon, Mr. Everchosen, because this is their first time meeting. He says, I have a deal for you, a proposition. I know you're looking for the crown of the crown of the Everchosen. The crown of domination. I know where it is, and I'll tell you where it is if you will help me sack Brillion Castle over here in Bretonia, because I can't do it by myself. I'm so pathetic. I'm so sad. I'm so weak. Please help me, Mr. Archaon. And Archaon,
it's a cunning plan.
Yeah, and Archaon goes, this is sketch as fuck, but I'm really desperate to know where that crown is, so okay, I guess. And so the two of them team up. And which really sucks for Brillion Castle. Not a good time for them. So Archaon attacks the castle, and we get this big old fight between Bretonia and the Warriors of Chaos, where ultimately Archaon is victorious. But one of the big things in the fight is that Vilitch, this happens differently in the novel than it does in the 8th edition book, But the TLDR is Vilitch, of course, betrays Archaon.
Yeah.
And you find out that Vilitch is so fucking arrogant, and he is so strong, and he's such an envious little spiteful turd that despite all of the power he has, when he finds out about Archaon's existence, he immediately gets jealous and says, I want that power. I want to be Archaon. And so he sets up this elaborate scheme. And to Vilitch's credit, he is one of the closest that anybody gets to killing Archaon.
Gives it a good go.
Yeah, which in the novels, he unleashes a big spell that turns a lot of Archaon's army into Chaos Spawn that immediately start attacking him in mass. But in the army book to introduce the new Slaughter Brute, which is the new big model you can buy, basically there's a Slaughter Brute that is Vilitch brings and like, look, I brought you this big monster. The thing about Slaughter Brutes, which the story is actually kind of fun, is that they can have a ritual performed on them where a Chaos champion can control them mentally through like a ritual where they impale a sword on their back and control them. And Vilitch basically gives them the Slaughter Brute. They do this whole thing. And then after they win, Vilitch teleports behind one of Archaon's closest friends and just immediately butchers him. Like, just kills him. And the Slaughter Brute goes crazy. It attacks Archaon. Archaon almost dies, but he unleashes the Bloodthirster within his sword, the Slayer of Kings, and that gives him the advantage, which Vilitch did not know that the Slayer of Kings has a fucking Bloodthirster in it that makes Archaon...
Well, Vilitch isn't necessarily smart.
Yeah, he's not. This was in general, it was a stupid plan. It's
a really stupid plan. But the crazy thing with Vilitch is he's so fucking powerful that his plans don't need to be clever. No. He just needs to be there, and he unleashes all hell, and normally he wins.
Yep. And so Archaon kills the Slaughter Brute. Vilitch tries unleashing sorcery, but surprise, Archaon has the Eye of Shirian, which makes him able to actually throw down. And Archaon gets up on him and holds the sword to his throat and says, where's the fucking crowd? And Vilitch, if he was literally anyone else, Archaon would have killed him right then. Because Archaon was going to. Archaon was going to kill him. And Vilitch basically just says, hey, Bellicor has it. Go fuck yourself. And he teleports. And he's just gone.
Missed! Out of here!
Yeah. Yeah. And he gets away with betraying the Everchosen.
Yeah, but again, my recollections of this story are weaker than I would prefer. I kind of wish I'd gone over it again. But as I recall, a good chunk of this as well suggests that Vilitch is working with Bellicor to bring this all into place.
Yes,
and much of the powers that he's demonstrating are really Bellicor adjacent. When he teleports away, he turns into mist. The Shirian, who's the advisor of Archaon at this point, whom we turn into something far better in a create your own Archaon, create your own Everchosen stream.
The original Shirian's dead by this point.
Is it dead at this point? Because I'm pretty sure that Shirian advises that
he gets eaten by the Flamefang when he brings Flamefang back.
I remembered him having a chat with him saying that Bellicor was advising Vilitch.
I believe you might be thinking of the father who is hanging out with Archaon.
That might be it. Okay. Again, my memories of this part are weak, but it doesn't really matter. Bellicor's read through all of this, and you can see the natural linking point between Bellicor and Vilitch. And it's not because they have anything close to similar personalities. They do not. They are really different. But Vilitch is such an easy individual to manipulate because he's not that clever. He's not that bright. And he is someone who can bring Archaon, which is ultimately one of Bellicor's big pawns on the table, to bear. So you can see how it all pans out and how Vilitch is used in that story.
Interestingly, Vilitch is kind of he's a very unique Tzeentchian character in that because all of his power was given to him, he, like Andy said, he's very childish and easy to manipulate. Of that, in many ways, he's the most powerful Tzeentchian mortal, but in almost every other way, he's the absolute weakest because he's so easy to mess around with.
Yeah, he hasn't earned it. He has not earned his right to sit where he sits in the great pantheon of Tzeentch schemers. Most who are elevated by Tzeentch are elevated because they've elevated themselves. They've schemed their way into a better place. Vilitch has done fuck all to deserve it, to the point that it would not surprise me if a later story said Be'lakor gave him the powers.
Yeah.
Because Tzeentch does not do this under normal circumstances. But it would make absolute sense if Be'lakor had just gone, there you go. Because remember, Be'lakor has been given all of the magic in the world by Tzeentch, in the same way that Be'lakor was given all of the ability to fight by Khorne, and all of the ability to do everything that all of the Chaos Gods do, because he was their ultimate champion. He was the best of the best that had the powers of all the Chaos Gods running through him. Passing over spells to someone that's pathetic and weak is child's play to an entity like Be'lakor. And elevating someone like Vilitch and making him think it's Tzeentch makes a great deal more sense, particularly when you see what he does around Archaon to manipulate Archaon and get Archaon where Archaon needs to be as far as Be'lakor is concerned, than Tzeentch doing it. Because ultimately, why would Tzeentch care? But equally, you can play the Tzeentch story with equal aplomb. But if you want to try and take it from different directions, there is quite a few options available.
All right. From here, we're going to get caught up on Super Chats and stuff. And then we'll dive into
the end times.
The end times and his magic item, which does warrant a bit of a discussion. Ascended Overlord. Would Sail be a match for Vilitch after performing his Total War ritual? Where would Sail rank after the ritual? So, Total War obviously goes with some pretty fun, crazy places with its sandbox story. And in that Vilitch, in that Total War story, Sail basically performs like a great ritual that funnels a stupid amount of magic into himself. And he basically should have ascended to a demon prince, but because of the constraints of the game, they just make him a really powerful wizard. Yes, he would probably body Vilitch after that ritual.
I'd say probably yes, because he's also clever. And Vilitch is not. Vilitch would just lash out. Basically, he'd be like a child, lashing all over the place with his magic. And Sail would be much, much more careful and would be very surgically taking apart what Sail had to offer. And yeah, I think they would be largely, in terms of power, on a par with each other. But because Sail is so much more, and in many respects has earned that position by doing clever things, Vilitch has earned nothing. Vilitch is just somebody's pawn on a board.
Yeah, I've also seen some people asking about like Egrim von Horseman versus Vilitch. Egrim would dismantle Vilitch because he is such an expert on magic. Though Vilitch, if you were just having like raw power throw at each other, Dragon Ball Z style, Vilitch would probably overwhell Egrim.
Yeah,
but Egrim is a fucking genius.
Yeah, Egrim is a genius, and Egrim would pick his fight. It's almost like saying the classic stupid superhero arguments of who Batman faces off against choose your character of choice, and everyone who loves Batman says Batman's wins because he's clever and he does all this. And on the other side, they're like, no, but he just zap him once and he's dead. And it's somewhat similar here. Egrim is beyond any measure of intelligence versus a Vilitch. Vilitch is an idiot, a village idiot in comparison, and he would be able to very carefully dismantle him, manipulate him. He probably wouldn't kill him. Why would they even pitch against him? But, and this is the big bit, it's a little bit like going against Bane if you're Batman. If he gets his hands on you, you're fucked. Yep. And that's the same with Vilitch. Vilitch has such power that if he gets the spell on you, you're fucked. So he would just stay away, because that's not really how these clever characters work. They don't work by going toe-to-toe with another. That's what you do in a novel, because that's the story that the novelist chose to tell. But the reality is someone like Egrim would be miles away, manipulating from afar, never once getting into close combat or magical combat with it, because that character is much more useful to him, fucking everything up in its advance on presumably the whim of someone like Egrim.
Yep. A Vilitch idiot. Oh, Biofoot. How long would it take for Vilitch to body Be'lakor? Trick question. Be'lakor would body himself, and Vilitch would end up leading the fishmen. I mean, if prior stories or anything to go by, Bellicor would get 99% of the way through his plan, ultimately achieve the grander goal, but then lose at the last second.
Yeah, totally. And Zinch would laugh. Ha 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 ha.
Classic. Classic. Zero Time. Is his domination Olgu? Sounds like that Lawhammer ring.
So, Olgu is the most commonly used mental magic. Other forms of the 8 winds of magic can, to a lesser or greater degree, affect the mind, but not normally to trick it into doing something it doesn't want to do. That is Olgu, to its very core. Ryan is not just spot on, he's as spot on as you can get. That's the magic you use. And Vilitch is obviously using Olgu. Now, is it only Olgu? The answer is probably no. There's a host of different magic types in Warhammer that have gone through different names. Mentalism is one of them that popped up all over the place in earlier editions, and that got turned into grey magic. But grey magic was the safe, legal version. Mentalism was the illegal version that would often do things like leave Dar behind or potentially corrupt the user if they used it too much. Mentalism is one of the core magics in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition, for example. So the answer here is yes, it's Olgu.
Yeah. Skylar Martin, please, please, Vilitch. Mr. Everchosen was my father.
Vilitch.
A big storm puts him nearby where the crown is. Such a lucky dude. I sense Stromfell existence in here. It's probably just...
I would say instead it's Bellicor. Yeah. It's right beside where Bellicor is, up in Albion. It's Bellicor. I mean, everything about this is Bellicor. If you look at all of the major players in the area and you look at what the story says at the time, it's so obviously Bellicor's manipulation that it's almost not even worth trying to pretend it's anything else.
I don't think Stromfell would give a fuck about Archaon at all, the slightest.
The biggest thing that I found weird when I first read it was, why the fuck is it in Bretonia? Why the fuck isn't there all men of Bretonians stopping this? And Marienburg just, why is it these giant chaos dudes doing giant chaos things here? This is weird. They don't care to answer that particular point because they're far more interested in Archaon getting his next treasure.
Yeah, and also, like, man, the Bretonians are written so badly in that story.
They're super goofy.
The Bretonians act so dumb throughout the whole thing. It's like Archaon's out there with a giant chaos sword. He's like, come out and fight me, you coward. The Bretonian's like, how dare he? And, like, goes out and fights. And it's like, Bretonians aren't stupid. Like, bro, I have a castle. Fuck you. Come in here and get me. That would be the actual answer.
Yeah. It's a choice.
Intense ultimatum. Throwing 10 at you guys as a thanks for all the great work and to brag about my 4-1 victory over vampires as hilarious.
Congratulations, Intense Ultimatum, because that is a victory. Oh, yeah. That's one for the ages. Well done.
Dude, getting 4 touchdowns with halflings? God damn.
And that's good stuff.
Yeah. Very funny.
Well done.
Scott Martin, I must ask then. Okay, we answered this a little bit ago.
Yeah, we've answered that one. The answer is that on pure power, Vilitch is probably more powerful, but Van Horstman's going to body him.
Yeah, and notably,
in most situations.
If it's Egram, like he shows up on tabletop where he's riding on Baldros, Vilitch is super fucked. the dragon completely changes the equation, just to be clear. More to Crescent. I think rather than Bellicor, look at Kairos, turning a human into a 2-headed spellcaster as a pawn to set up Archaon's Ascension. You could totally do that. That would be
Mornington. I think this is a good idea. And as I brought up Bellicor because it's the one that the text suggests, because the story does speak to Bellicor quite a lot in that area. Bellicor is seen to have marked Vilitch and they're like, he's going to betray us. It's going to come, and Archaon's all like, oh, it'll be fine. When he betrays us, we'll just him a lot, and indeed they do. Where this here would be equally a pretty good story, where we're looking at Kairos. But again, why? What's the goal? One of the great things with our feathered lords is that they typically have a scheme that matters. Now, we may say, oh, but that scheme is so convoluted, we'd never understand it, and that's all we need to do. And you'd be right. But at the same point, we'd want the story to reflect that. So when we move into the end times, what he does is so extraordinary that Kairos goes, and I did that. And Kairos sets this up. But I'm going to argue that his end time story is not exactly that.
Yeah, it's the pieces are there if you want to make it happen, because they do work together in the end times. Yeah. Everything Andy just said. Singemeister, fine. I'll make a monster village more spells. 2 shadows, 2 heavens, 2 metal. Any Rex? For the shadow spells, I would, if you want to have fun with it, definitely do the ones that are more about like the mind. So do the I would do the maybe like enfeebling foe or withering or I can't, oh my god, I can't remember the big spell's called. The one that like buffs everyone up because it makes Mind Razor.
Mind Razor.
Yeah.
Mind Razor.
So I'd probably do like Occam's Mind Razor and Enfeebling Foe for that one. And then Heaven's probably the lightning spells. So like Chain Lightning and Uranus Thunderbolt. And then, I don't know, for metal, just do whatever you want.
Searing Doom. It's always fucking Searing Doom.
Searing Doom. Gary Geronison, or Gary Geronison, one of those two. I just popped in to show my support. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Gothic 1 remake is coming soon. Decades ago, the original was a cult classic in Eastern Europe, a dark fantasy RPG. Has either of you thought about playing it?
I played it back in the day. I did not know there was another one coming.
Well, there you go.
Huh. There you go. Look at that. Hopefully I might end up playing that just because it's so long ago that I played it, though. It feels like forever. Anyway, that's not for the stream.
Scott Martin, see Vilitch, prep time solves everything. I mean, it does. Being prepared is helpful in life.
It really does make a big difference. The Boy Scouts motto makes sense. Be prepared.
Yeah. So, Vilitch, back to our boy here. There is one last thing to talk about before we get into the end time story with him, and that is that Vilitch got an artifact. And this thing. So he has an artifact that's very vague in its description. It's simply called the Vessel. It's like the Vessel of Chaos, which not very descriptive. I could not even, looking at Vilitch's like model, I could not even tell you what it is on his person, because there's no like physical description of it. But what it is it is an arcane item that gives Vilitch. So Total War expanded what it does and actually makes some good sense, but in the original tabletop, this thing fucking sucked.
I hated it.
It was a bullshit item where basically Vilitch was such a powerful wizard, and the Vessel of Chaos was an artifact given to him by Tzeentch that basically made it where anytime your opponent attempted to do anything with magic and they failed, Vilitch just immediately snaps it up. So if your opponent's like, oh, I'm going to cast a spell, and he rolls 4 dice and he fails to cast, Vilitch just gains 4 more spell dice. Or if you cast a spell, this was the much worse one, which is if Vilitch tried to cast a spell and the enemy tries to dispel it and fails, Vilitch converted their magical effort of dispelling and turned it into more power dice, which could give him virtually infinite spells if you were not careful. It wasn't infinite, but it felt like it was infinite.
It certainly fucking did. So this artifact is, as Ryan says, exceedingly poorly described to the point that it almost feels like it's less an artifact, it's more just a special rule. Almost every artifact in Warhammer gets a lovely little sentence which normally says, they hold aloft the chalice that they took from Big Bad the Boggin or whatever that was made 2,000 years ago in the Great Battle of Blah, or whatever it might be. But nothing here, literally nothing at all. It's just artifact. Vessel of Chaos, away you go. He's the Vessel of Chaos, and magic bends to him. But only when others fuck up. Other people's fuck-ups are his advantage. Again, it sounds super Be'lakor coded, which is one of the reasons I quite like the Be'lakor potential link. But it also means that some characters that he goes against, should we be doing these duels that many people love to imagine and theory craft over, people like Egram are not really going to be, under normal circumstances, suffering a great deal from this because they're so good at their magic already. They don't fail in their castings. They don't fail in their dispellings. However, he's so good in turn that sometimes they will. He gets an advantage against them, even though they are so extraordinarily good. But against lesser wizards, he is a killer. And I mean a killer. If you weren't playing against an equal 4th level wizard in the game against him, he just dominated completely, wiped the floor. And that was reflected in how he was often used inside the descriptive side of it rather than the game side of it. On the game side, though, he was a monster. So, yeah, it's a horrible artifact. I hated it. I loved it because it's really nice, but I hated it because it sucked on the battlefield, and it also didn't have enough description for me to even understand what the hell it was.
Yeah, like in Total War, we get the note that it's a crucible, which still not super helpful, but I guess...
Did it say crucible Total War? Interesting. Okay,
yeah, we do get the word crucible added.
Is he carrying it? I don't remember seeing it on the model.
No, he's carrying like a staff and a staff in one hand, and then he's got like a sword in some art. But he's not holding anything.
He's not, is he?
Even looking at like the artist rendering breakdown of his model, and I don't see anything that appears to be the Vessel of Chaos.
No, he's got nothing that's obvious. You've got Vilitch where it is staff. You've got a big sword, and you've got like a cinchy whip thing. Yeah,
maybe it's like that weird thing inside of his sword. Maybe.
I mean, that would do for it, wouldn't it? Like a chaos symbol that sits inside his sword. But again, you'd expect Vilitch himself to be using it, and he's using the staff. You'd expect it to be something to do with the staff rather than a crucible.
Weird. In the staff or something. Who knows?
Maybe, who knows? So what we can say from all of that is that the writing here has just failed us completely. Normally, when it comes to magic artifacts, we get a lovely bit of flavor text that allows us to go, oh, I wonder where that comes from, or what does this mean? There's nothing here. We don't know where it came from. And the most obvious solution, if you're looking to just build one, is, particularly if we turn to Total War as well and look at it, is it's just a part of him. It's just who he is. Somehow he has this. Perhaps it was fused into him when he did his thing. Perhaps it's built into one of his artifacts. Who knows? But he has this as a base ability, and that's his ability to really, really take advantage of anyone else's fuck-ups.
Yep. Oh yeah, and you were okay. Yep. And you were right that he absolutely he actually has the mark of Bellicor on him when he fights Archaon. Like Archaon,
he does. I knew it was in the back of my mind somewhere.
And then Archaon does have a conversation with Shirian about it. Yes, so you were right. Yeah. You
no way. My memory's not as bad as I thought. Screw you, COVID.
The thing that Shirian tells him is that he likely is going to try and betray Bellicor.
Betray him.
Yeah. Which like, damn, stupid man.
That's good. I knew that was at the back of my head somewhere. I just couldn't quite remember which book it was in. It was really bugging me.
Yeah. So, so the Vessel and the thing that's very interesting about the Vessel, it's not really explored that much at all from like a lore perspective. And in like the stories they write about Vilitch, it never gets used. But if you were to actually break down what that thing is doing in the lore, where like when someone tries to manipulate the winds of magic, if it slips, for anyone that doesn't know how like casting or dispelling works, you literally have a wizard drawing the winds of magic to them and then trying to manipulate it into a certain form or state that they then unleash against an enemy to perform a certain function. I would really recommend watching Lawhammer if you want to give a really cool idea of like how dispelling can manifest, because dispelling often is not given good characterization. In Lawhammer, they do it in a really fucking cool way, where it's very similar to casting, but it relies on different effects. But lots and lots of wizards, even amazing wizards, will have bits and pieces of magic slip free of their control or spill out of control, or they'll end up taking in too much, or the spell they cast bleeds out a little bit. The fact that Vilitch is carrying some sort of artifact that literally sucks in any of the winds that are not being properly, expertly controlled, if you were to accurately interpret that into the lore, especially like in a roleplay scenario, Vilitch would be a character who would be so fucking scary, because if you try to cast any magic, or God forbid, stop his magic, which is overwhelmingly powerful, the fact that if you fail, he just gets stronger, makes him, once again, the best thing you could do if you see Vilitch coming is to get the fuck away from him. Just run. Just run.
Yeah, agreed on that completely. I'm just checking up if I can find anything on that fucking Crucible, because it's really bugging me. So it is an 8th edition where he mentioned it's a Crucible as well.
Oh, okay.
But there is nothing on the miniature.
It's like usually like a little thing you could put stuff in, right?
A crucible's not a little thing. A crucible's what you melt metal in. Okay, a crucible's a big thing. I
don't see anything on him that can even remotely.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll pull up the miniature and bring it up on screen in a moment, just so you can have a look at it and try and decide whether you think there's an obvious place for a crucible to be. It looks like a complete failure on the miniature side, if not necessarily the description side, because it does mention crucible there, and there is no obvious crucible. So whether he's got a big literal crucible like you might find in, I don't know, a forge wandering around with him seems wrong. Looks like it's probably something that's described as a crucible that magic gets sucked into, swirls around, and he can then use himself in one fashion or another. There is nothing on him that suggests this, so I'm going to say that the most obvious choice would be take that chaos symbol on his sword and say that that's where the magic's coming into and then flying back out of. There is nothing else on him that comes close to that. I'll bring up the miniature in just a moment. You can decide what you think. Let me just save that so that I can bring it up on the screen.
Yeah. While Andy's doing that, I will go ahead and take us into the end times.
The end times.
So, the end times for Vilitch. So we first get to see him mostly in the Glotkin book. So he doesn't show up in no, he does show up in Nagash. He shows up briefly in Nagash. Not Glotkin. So in Nagash, we basically get his first foray, which actually rather amusingly goes quite poorly for him, where Vilitch. So we've actually done, this is actually a really good example of what we've been talking about, which is that Vilitch is a character who is very, very powerful, but he's not a good leader, and he's frankly kind of stupid. In the way that he's not like a grand schemer or clever fighter by any means. So the first time we really see him in the end times is that he has his big army, like the puppets of Misrule, and he is leading this army south from the Chaos Waste, and he passes through Kislev, which has already been absolutely curb stomped, and he manages to get past the barrier wall that either was erected or started to break down at this point, and he goes to lay siege to Castle von Rauken, which, if you are a fan of Warhammer 8th Edition and the whole thing with the Black Iron Reaver, you may go, oh, Castle von Rauken, because it plays a role in that story of that it actually, oh, yeah, the Crucible could be the plate in his belly.
Yeah, I'll give that. And since we're pausing just a brief moment, I'll just say, one thing I always found amusing about this miniature was it looks like he's whispering at his brother. And I was going to mention this earlier, and I've completely forgot to say it, which always gives you that feeling that, you know, he's taunting him, because we know he has complete control. So it does suggest there's a good bit of his brother's mind still in there, and he's just sitting there taunting him.
This is actually confirmed in the End Times and Total War, where like Vilitch just screams at his brother constantly. Like he's always hitting him, yelling at him, berating him, and his brother just goes, ugh, or like says like a single word. But Vilitch abuses the shit out of his brother. Constantly, and it has been for decades.
And that's great. I love that.
Yeah. So, which we'll talk more about as we get a little later. So Castle von Rauken, which played a notable part of the story of the Black Iron Reaver, is under siege by Vilitch. And the thing about it is that, unlike last time, where the Chaos Horde was led by the absolute genius, oh my god, I'm blanking on his name.
I'm sorry, I've not been listening, I've been reading the comments, sorry. I can't come in and help.
Sorry, the Black Iron Reaver, the Norskin Chaos Lord that gives up the Chaos Gods and dies a man, that whole weird story that's fun but kind of odd.
I can't remember.
Yeah, hold on, I'm gonna Google it, because Mortkin, thank you, god, yeah, there it is.
Mortkin, thank you.
So Lord Mortkin actually successfully fucks up Castle von Rauken. And he ends up going to the Siege of Volkanov, where he kills the Electric Count's son. But this time, the Chaos Horde is led by Vilitch, who is not nearly as competent of a commander. And he's also got this big puppet army, as opposed to like a very diverse functioning in and of itself Chaos Horde. And the defense of Castle von Rauken is led by none other than Aldebrand Ludenhoff himself, who is the Elector Count of Hochland. And not Holland.
Not Holland. Hochland.
Holland. And the thing is, Ludenhoff is not a wizard. He is not the greatest warrior in the world necessarily, but he's a fucking kick-ass tactician. And he is a clever motherfucker. And his defense of his castle against this incredibly powerful sorcerer, he holds off Vilitch for a while. Like he just completely stops dead Vilitch's invasion. Vilitch the Grand, Vilitch the Badass. Vilitch gets stopped by a normal man with a rune fang and a gun, leading a very
it's a choice.
And which I find very, very fun. But
very odd.
Yeah, the big thing that happens is that the Reichsguard, so big old horde of knights and everything, shows up to reinforce the battle, and we get the big Battle of Lubrecht. And at the Battle of Lubrecht, we get the main moment that shows the weakness of Vilitch, to be very blunt, which is that Albrecht Ludenhoff, being genuinely a very smart
Aldebrand.
guy, Aldebrand. What did I say? Albrecht? Yeah, Aldebrand, yes. Elector Count Ludenhoff is a very, very smart man. And he is able to parse together pretty quickly that Vilitch is quite literally a puppet master controlling an army of puppets. And so he does the smartest thing a man could genuinely do, which is that he gets a Hochland long rifle and he shoots Vilitch in the fucking head. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Now, the problem is he shoots Vilitch in the wrong head. He actually shoots Tommen in the head.
Yeah.
And now, to his credit, this fucks up Vilitch bad enough and wounds him bad enough that his control over his army just breaks.
Classic undead.
Yeah, and Vilitch goes, oh fuck, after being shot in the face and just runs. He just flees the battlefield. Because
he's brave.
Frankly, he's going up against someone that knows how to deal with him, which is from very far away with a firearm.
Yeah, I remember having issues with this whole storyline. And the biggest issue is we needed to have clearly wizards on the other side.
Yes.
Because without them, Vilitch is not going to lose. He just isn't. Now, he's stupid enough that he might not put shields up to stop getting shot. That works really well. But he's too powerful not to have just decimated everything in front of him, walked through those forces, and then eradicated the rest. He has too much power to bear with what he is described as being. So the story needs, if you want it to be nice and balanced, at least 2 or 3 or 4 very competent wizards on the other side supporting the Elector Count, holding off the worst of the magics to give them enough of an opportunity to figure out how to take out Vilitch, who is not a good commander. He's a shit one. He's got himself a massive horde of idiots on his side.
Have a collection of maybe some of the patriarchs and matriarchs that were
something like that. That would have been perfect. Something like that. And the story doesn't need much modification to be a better story. It just needs enough space to be given for Aldebrand to sit down and go, that's the one we need to take out, and come up with a good reason for why he's come up with that. The resolution is great. Shooting him, taking out the brother's head is brilliant. Him running away is equally brilliant. That whole resolution is some pretty damn fine ways of dealing with Vilitch. I think it's a brilliant story. I just think that the setup for it needed a bit more meat, so it didn't seem like the writer had done this. 2 forces meet, and those 2 forces just bash at each other for a while, and then the leader of one force figures out how to stop the leader on the other force. Bang! And he runs away. That's pretty much how it's described. Where really it's 2 forces meet, and this one is so much more powerful. Aldebrand Ludenhoff is killed. That's what should happen under normal circumstances. So we need to have just a little bit more meat there to make sense of why Vilitch is not the unstoppable monster that he's described as being.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it can work well, It just needs more meat. But this functionally takes Vilitch out of a part of the end times because he goes off and heals basically. Because what Tommen's about to do a little later seems to indicate that Vilitch runs away to basically heal his brother's brain. Because his brother was functionally killed in that moment, but he's able to keep their body moving. But being a master of many forms of sorcery, probably uses some life magic to resurrect Tommen.
Yeah. Or possibly even necromancy. Let's be honest. He's got all magic underneath his fingertips. He can probably do almost anything. But he's panicked. He's uncertain. He's unsure. The body's dying beneath him. He needs to do something to bring it back towards its full power and for Tommen to be back underneath his control again.
Yep. And he vanishes for several years because the end times last for like nearly a decade. And he's gone for like a good 6 of them.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
4 or 5
because we don't really see him until like the end, I think.
Yeah, we don't see the literal very
thank goodness, because that's all I remember.
Yeah.
Phew.
So Vilitch basically runs away and hides because his army got massacred after he was wounded. The Empire whooped his ass, which is very funny. And this builds up to after the fall of Middenheim. So Middenheim falls to Archaon in that whole mess of a story. And
dude, it's a great story.
Yeah, super great. Yeah. So Archaon is chilling in Middenheim. And we get to see
chilling in his winning.
Yeah, basically. One of the stories that the end times had been playing around with leading up to this point is that Kairos Fate Weaver is basically acting as one of the big advisors to Archaon. So there's several scenes throughout the books where we get to see Archaon and Kairos Fate Weaver is nearby, constantly talking to him and trying to get Archaon to do certain things. When Archaon is just kind of doing his own shit and telling Kairos to shut the hell up most of the time. And the big thing between them is that Kairos wants Archaon to fulfill his role as ever chosen and bring the world to an end, where Archaon instead cares more about tracking down all of the remnants of Sigmar and crushing them underneath his heel, because he has a huge hate boner for Sigmar. Fucking hates him. And he wants Karl Franz. He wants Karl Franz more than anything in the world. As long as Karl Franz is still alive, he will not be satisfied. And so in Middenheim, if you know the end time story, there's basically like a doomsday device buried way down beneath the city. And Kairos is saying, hey, Archaon, I need you to do the ritual and set off the doomsday device. And Archaon says, no, not until I have Karl Franz. So I'm going to go get him. And he's way down the south in Everheim. And Kairos says, no, you can't leave. You got to do this ritual. And Archaon says, try and stop me. And Kairos goes, okay, how about a compromise? Let's do a compromise. I will find someone to go in your stead down to Everheim, grab Karl Franz and bring him back to you. And Archaon's like, all right, fine. And of all the people that Kairos
the end times,
he summons
Vilitch.
Best general ever.
Yeah, which leads to a bit of an awkward exchange where Archaon's like, okay, you're asking me to emphatically trust one of the only living souls that has actively betrayed and tried to kill me in the past.
And not died.
Yeah, and not suffered for it. So they have this whole goofy back and forth. And Archaon says, all right, fine. I charge you to go down to Everheim. You do not kill Karl Franz. You capture him and bring him back to life.
Rather than chains, bring him to me.
Yeah. And Vilitch is like, Totes, got it. I can handle that. So Vilitch ends up, if you actually read the final book, Archaon, which is part 5, Vilitch is genuinely the big bad at the first third of the book. Yeah. I know just the guy. I know just the guy.
Vilitch is just that guy. Let me just give him a call. Hey, Vilitch, do you want to? Who? Shh, you love him. Hey, Vilitch, do you want to come over? You can take Karl Franz, right? Yes. Yes, we got. Oh, dear.
Yeah, I know the perfect guy who won't kill Karl Franz on accident.
100% reliable.
Yeah, anyway. So Vilitch gets put in charge of a giant horde, Archaon's great horde, and he leads this huge army down to Aberheim. And to Vilitch's credit, in the first part of the Archaon book, he is a genuine nightmare. The attack of Aberheim is brutal, even though he's going up against 3 of the incarnates, because you have at this point you have Gelt becomes the incarnate of metal during this, Ungrim's the incarnate of fire, and Karl Franz is the incarnate of heavens. And Vilitch has such a big army, and he is such a personal bitch to deal with that it actually caused Vilitch is a threat. He is he does a really good job at killing a lot of different groups. The poor knights of the everlasting light, those poor bastards. They finally get, if you know their story, they're those guys are tragic. They're just
really unlucky.
Yeah, they get finished off finally by Vilitch. And he also kills tons and tons of dwarfs and a bunch of other stuff. But then the big duo team of Karl Franz and Ungrim show up, and because they are incarnates, they are these incredibly powerful magical forces, they whoop his ass, to be very, very blunt. And Vilitch attempts to he kind of tests their defenses several times, but after Vilitch witnesses Karl Franz's, it's not actually Karl Franz at this point. It's literally just Sigmar, just wearing Karl Franz's body like a marionette. So it's one puppet against another. Once Vilitch sees Karl Franz in action, he goes, you know what? I'm not going to fight that guy. I'll fight other places. I'm not fighting that guy. Fuck that. I'm not fighting him. And which was smart on Vilitch's part. And a whole bunch of stuff happens. Vilitch even actually successfully summons the Changeling, who had been banished to the Forge of Souls after being killed. He summons the Changeling. The Changeling goes in and immediately gets sniped by Karl Franz. Immediately gets taken out.
Yep.
Because Karl Franz, being Sigmar, just recognizes him through magic eye tiger. Grant me sight by on sight, and just bonks him, kills him.
I am really biting my tongue not to rip into all of this, but you just hammer through.
That brings us to essentially the finale of the story, where Vilitch is trying to figure out a way to deal with these incarnates and finish off the siege when he is scrying, scouting defenses, looking at the future and stuff, and he sees...
Which again, different magic type.
Yeah, and he sees that Archaon is coming. Archaon has gotten impatient. He's tired of Vilitch taking so fucking long, and so he he's on his way. And Vilitch goes, oh shit, oh fuck, the boss is coming, I need to wrap this up. So he tries to coordinate a big assault with a bunch of hell cannons and Chaos Dwarf war machines and Skaven and all this other shit. But then I'm not going to explain this, I'm just going to say it. Balthazar Gelt / Karl Franz use magic to open a portal between the castle of Aberheim and Vilitch's camp where he is and all the war machines are, and it basically teleports this giant army of knights and dwarfs just immediately into the camp, and Vilitch suddenly finds himself under attack by the forces of order, and he puts up a good fight, but ultimately loses pretty badly. And as Karl Franz and everyone retreat back into the portal, because the bigger part of Archaon's horde is coming down on them, Vilitch chases them into the portal. And unfortunately for him, as he goes into the portal being like, I'll get you, Karl Franz, he doesn't. He fails quite poorly.
He doesn't.
And the portal closes on both sides with him still inside of it. And so Vilitch is just I have no fucking idea where I am. He's in a dimensional gateway that has now been sealed shut. So he wanders around for an indeterminate amount of time before he finally finds something. And when he basically casts a little magic to light it up, he realizes that he has become lost in the crystal labyrinth of Zinch. Which, sure.
Sure.
And
because that's what's connecting these places.
Yeah, and it leads to kind of a very it's not a great written line, but it's a line that always makes me laugh, which is that Vilitch out loud literally says like, "That's weird. Zinch saved me. I didn't ask for him to save me." And his brother Tommen, for the first time in decades, says,
"It's my turn now."
Yeah, and basically, what's revealed is that Tommen has been apparently praying to Zinch secretly, I guess, this time. And Zinch finally says, Vilitch, you're not fun anymore. And their control swaps. So Tommen becomes the dominant personality and Vilitch fades away. And Tommen wanders off into the Crystal Labyrinth and is never seen again. But so I want to say something that me and Andy were discussing earlier made me actually realize that they fucked this up because they could have done this in a really cool way, which in my opinion, what you could do is if you wanted to take this almost exact same story, not the exact same, there's a lot I would change, but if you want to take Vilitch himself, part of the story, the flip of Tommen could have been such a good buildup of the idea that when Tommen gets shot in the head and Ludendorff basically kills him, you could do such a cool story of Vilitch running off and like healing him and bringing Tommen back to life. But in doing so, he basically accidentally makes Tommen better than he was, like regenerating his brain through like Gyran or some other form of magic.
You know what I'd have done?
What do you go on?
Nagash.
Oh yeah, Nagash. That would have been so cool if Nagash, like Vilitch and Nagash are fighting and Nagash just resurrects Tommen's corpse.
Nagash is, I mean, he's clearly resurrected him. The dude's dead. Okay, and we all know who the Lord of Death is. The Lord of Death is Nagash. There is an obvious, whenever the end times comes up, I always get annoyed at the obvious story beats not being used. You've got great characters that have got stories that they always draw upon. Why not use them to do what we all expect them to do? This is the end times. It's the last moment where they can all do their super cool thing that they're known for. And who is known for fucking with something that's dead? It's Nagash. Zinch giving him the flip and then he walks off into the sunset is, for the end times, an almost pointless story. It doesn't do anything. It gives us no resolution for the character. It gives us no resolution for the wounds that he has brought upon the various people he's faced off against. Nagash could have been pretty freaking awesome here. Yeah,
it would have been so good. That would have been such a cool thing of establishing Vilitch as a unstoppable monster. Yeah. And then he goes up against Nagash or one of the Mortarks, and after he got because that would have been so cool, because it would have been Ludendorff's contribution would have been so good of Tommen, and it has consequences.
Massive consequences. The death of Tommen is the death ultimately of Vilitch's free will and his ability to continue on. And that would have been super cool as an unexpected twist of the story moving on.
That horror scene of the necromancer being like, I don't have to fight you. And they just resurrect Tommen, and Tommen's body just like reaching back.
Or even Tommen taking control and throttling frickin' Vilitch, because
he just starts ripping into him.
He doesn't even need to bring him back, because he's already brought back by Vilitch. Vilitch's mistake was using necromancy. He's the master of all magics.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, his mistake was he used necromancy to bring his body back so that he could move. And if he hadn't used necromancy, he could almost certainly have continued on in some other really broken way.
That would have been such a better use of that stupid scene where Vlad just is like, oh, I control your zombie dragon now. Die, Wallach.
Yeah.
Such a stupid scene.
There's so many fun things that could have been done with it, but it wasn't. Now, to bring up one, Gelt could use necromancy. Yeah, almost certainly so could Vilitch. So I don't think that's what's important. What matters here is the Lord of Undeath. The Lord of Undeath controls necromancy in a way that no one else does. And he thinks, I've got the master of all magic because Zinch. And he comes along and goes, I'm Nagash. Fuck yeah. Yeah. And there could have been a really nice twist there.
It would have been that perfect moment of Vilitch being forced to feel small. And realizing that he is in the presence of something beyond him. Because that would fuck with Vilitch. That is literally the worst way Vilitch. If Vilitch is on mind, that's the worst way he could go out.
And what way should he go out? He should be beaten to death by his brother. Finally, should
have killed Vilitch.
Oh, absolutely, and that would have been fun. And I would
of them, really.
Yeah, I'd have liked something like that. I mean, it doesn't need to be good, but yeah, something like that.
Yeah, wandering off. It was a bummer too, because when he wanders off, there was a lot of hope that he was going to come back in AOS, and they just turned him into a generic model, and we never see Vilitch again. There's no resolution to what happens to Tommen. He just vanishes.
I presume, because I've someone saying that this was a response to Gelt revives him. And if that is the case, then yeah, you could do that, but he was already revived, so there's nothing to revive, so to speak. He's already got up and going because Vilitch is doing his thing at this point. So the deed where the necromancy or the reanimation had occurred, it's already come to pass. Gelt might recognize him for what he is, rather than necessarily recognizing him as simply Vilitch. So you could use that as a story beat.
That could have been a fun story beat of like Gelt recognizes what Tommen has become, and that's how Vilitch is continuing on. But that like that's the Chekhov's gun waiting to fire. And
yeah, waiting to fire. Yeah, totally. Agreed. Yeah. And that would have been potentially a half decent use of Gelt's ridiculous story. Fuck that guy and his stupid story. I'm not saying that I dislike his story or anything, but seriously, fuck that guy and his stupid end time story.
All right, let's get back over to some super chat nonsense here. Alpha Mans. It would be interesting if all of Vilitch's magic wasn't from Tzeentch, but also from Tommen's abilities.
Well, it's interesting potentially, but as we get the story in black and white, Tommen had zero magical ability. That's just not what he did. Tommen was the equivalent of what would presumably become a Chaos Lord in the end. He would be a close combat wombat. He would not be someone who was magically inclined at all. Now, you could mix it up by doing this if you wished, and there's nothing stopping you if you wish to, Alpha. But I would say that there's no real need for this. The question that you need to answer is, where does the magic come from and why? And if the answer is just simply Tzeentch's whim, that'll do. If the answer is Be'lakor, that will do. If the answer is Kairos Fateweaver, that will do. Each brings a different story to the table, and it can be resolved in a different way. If we're building for an end time story, I think probably the best of them is Be'lakor, because it shows that Tzeentch himself is probably disappointed with how this is all turning out. You can use Tzeentch in the end plays as well in a way that just makes you go, Vilitch was never what he thought he was, which sort of works on a Be'lakor front as well. But you can equally do that with Tzeentch and Kairos Fateweaver as well. I don't think there's a need for what you've suggested, but you could do it without too much difficulty.
Yeah, I think there actually would be kind of a fun story of exploring that Be'lakor in some ways ends up being Vilitch's, like in the grand scheme, undoing of that. He manipulates Vilitch instead of being this agent of chaos that is utterly enslaved to his own whims and desires, that Tzeentch is sitting there going, yeah, look at you being reckless and stupid, you idiot, I love this. Be'lakor gets him laser focused on trying to basically co-opt Archaon, and Vilitch becomes so much less interesting to the Changer of the Ways. Because Be'lakor basically uses his own nature against him.
Yeah, all of those make for potentially interesting stories. What we have for Vilitch is ultimately sort of uninteresting, which is he's given all magic, pretty much, in a nutshell, go. And then he's given almost no story other than Archaon, hey, they met, and he helps Archaon get his last artifact. Not by his entire own will. And then he meets him again later, having already been beaten by Aldebaran Ludenhoff, the Electric Count, in a battle he shouldn't have lost. And then is, according to Kairos Fateweaver, a good choice to go down and kill a bunch of very powerful entities, goes down there, has his ass handed to him, and then disappears into the wasteland. It's just a bad story. They're speaking nothing to him. It's not talking about his character. The decisions that he makes have nothing to do with his character, and he just sort of pointed and pushed at a thing to fight because they want to have another battle with special characters in it. And the battle makes almost zero sense if you look at it with any weight at all. So, yeah, anything that would have provided him with a better run-through of a story into the early end times with the Archeon novel and then into the end, I think would have been potentially better than what we got.
Vilefoot, so we can attribute Vilitch's failures to Be'lakor. I mean, you could if you wanted to.
I think this might be a better way of handling it in general, which I've obviously intimated already, which is to show that Vilitch is a scheme of Be'lakor to cause chaos, big C and small c, and to continue on his own plans for the Everchosens and ultimately taking back the power that should be his, which is summed up simply as the Everchosen. The powers that have been removed from him, and should be, as far as he's concerned, returned. And Vilitch could be an extraordinarily useful pawn in that, particularly when you look at where he does get deployed in the story. It gives more intent to what happens in Archeon. It gives more description and understanding for what's going on there. It then just needs a better conclusion when you head into the end times component of it.
And I think it works so well of Vilitch. I think his strongest characterization that it's important to hang on to is Vilitch should be a character who has overwhelmingly horrific power, but because it was given to him, he is ultimately a pawn of someone else. And he's completely oblivious to it.
And even if he's not the pawn of Be'lakor, he's the pawn of someone because he's such an idiot. He's just not that big and he's not that clever. He is exceedingly powerful, but he hasn't got just enough brain to really put everything together. He's not a classic Tzeentch champion. And it's, I think, one of his greatest strengths.
Yeah, that's what I like a lot about him.
Yeah, me too. I think he's a great character. He's just not really being used. Because what we have here is, if we're to be... let's go as far as we can with it. He is the most powerful sorcerer in the north, and he has no idea how to use it or how to best deploy it, which means that someone can. And because he's so powerful, someone will, because you're dealing with entities like great unclean ones, great feathered lords. Okay, greater demons of Tzeentch will manipulate everything to their own way. He's a classic pawn. The various great sorcerers of Tzeentch, the great magus of the chaos, they'll be looking at someone like him and going, well, I want what he has, and if I can't get what he has, I will be pointing him towards all my enemies. He's just this giant cannon waiting to be blown in the direction of whomever can manipulate him best. Egrim van Horstman would be all over him like a plague, going, yeah, all my little cabal are going to be moving him towards where we want. Yes, yeah. He is.
He's a literal parasite. Yeah, more
and that literal parasite aspect of his character could really be dialed up. I think he's great. I just think that as it currently stands,
I fully agree with Andy of that. The thing that would work so well about him is just imagining this almost godlike child mentality, vindictive little shit who the scheme with it isn't what his grand desires are, because he doesn't really have any other than to just lash out at people around him.
And be bigger and be better. I mean, one of his grand desires was, I'm going to take out Archeon. Why? Because Archeon's bigger than me. He's as easy to manipulate as that. Like, all you need to do is point him towards something that's bigger than him and he'll immediately try to take it down.
Like, you can just imagine there being a storyline of like some great cabal of Tzeentch where all of the members are trying to manipulate him to take out the other members so that they could grow in power. But it's a careful game of making sure he doesn't become aware of it, because he'll just lash out at them and kill them all.
And kill them. Yeah, because he's that powerful. He's a brilliant potential pawn on the battlefield. And when you use that aspect of him, he works both as a Tzeentch character or a Be'lakor character, because for Tzeentch, he's this great power that they're all attempting to manipulate and use. He's brilliant. He's a goblin without the cunning, says Amadeus. That amuses me. Yeah, to a degree, yes, but he is also stupendously powerful, and that makes him one of the more interesting characters for how he could be used. But he sort of wasn't used at all. Yeah, no, he was just sort of pointed at Archeon, then given a terrible battle against Ludenhof, and then sent down to deal with Karl Franz, and then walks off into the sunset. Meh.
Grim Isaac, could the Castle von Rauken have an obsidian mine beneath it? I doubt it.
So, von Rauken, if we go with some of the descriptions, could have that. Because what we have is if we go with one of its descriptions, it's called Little Middenheim, and it's built on a small volcanic plug on the edge of the Northern March. So the Northern March is the great wastelands to the north of Ostland, which are just rolling grasslands filled with horses and the like. And this volcanic plug stands up, and it's volcanic. Could come hand in hand with obsidian. Doesn't even need to have a mine. It could have obsidian run through the heart of it. So the answer is, yeah, you could. But as I recall, he loses the actual battle that Ludenhof wins is down by the border with Hochland.
Because it's the Imperial. You remember a big cavalry army shows up, and Ludenhof basically sallies out to reinforce them, and there's a big fight.
Yeah. So this wouldn't resolve the issue, but I think the issue doesn't need to have as complicated a resolution as this. It can just simply be there was enough spellcasters on the other side that they could hold off his magics long enough for a clever plan to be brought up. And that's kind of not what happens. Instead, we just have two armies meet, one with an impossible sorcerer, the other one with just an electric count, and somehow he isn't turned into Zinch juice. It's not the best resolution.
Yep. Gnivel, don't forget, Gelt was also Grugni at this time. We're not getting into that whole
Do
mess.
I have to remember this?
We're not getting into the whole
Dude. I mean, I will say, thank you so much for being a member for 4 months. Well, I now wither into my chair.
Yeah. Grugni, the dwarf god, who is somehow part of the Winds of Magic now, which does not make any fucking sense for dwarf gods at all. Who were not etheric beings, but Games Workshop was like, too bad, they're etheric beings now, go fuck yourself.
And if they are etheric beings, they need to have a better story to account for what they become.
Yeah, I will warn y'all now, next Sunday, when we get into the Dwarden, the Dwarden themselves are interesting. What they did to Grugni and Grimnir, we're going to have some
words. We're going to have some proper words.
Because God damn, did they fuck that up.
My ancestors are not at all happy with this.
No. Ricky Chapman, Vilitch was the patron of Zinch Ogre Sorcerer PC in our Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Chaos campaign. We weren't betrayed by him at all, thanks to all the paranoid prep that we did.
Yeah, quite. Hey, Ricky, potentially a good use of Vilitch here. Vilitch is someone that is so low on his own self-respect. He has such a low opinion of everything about him. He's constantly grasping around that if you are appropriately obsequious, he's going to love it. He's going to lap it up, feeling like, I've got the power. Yeah, I'm amazing. So yeah,
he's very Skaven-like.
Yeah.
Like if you could fawn to him properly, but you have to be careful because there's going to be other agents that are going to be like, they're lying to you. They're just using you. Like it's a Vilitch himself is actually relatively easy to deal with if you really want to deal with him. The problem is the moment anyone else enters that equation, it gets really complicated because you basically are like divorced parents fighting over the love of a really shitty kid. Really shitty kid.
Yeah, he is the worst. Genuinely the worst. So yeah, I like this because paranoid prep I think would see you through potentially Vilitch, but Vilitch is chaotic. You do one thing wrong and you're his puppet, and he'll just take you. Puppet gone, you're mine now. But there is a certain sadness and loneliness that comes with that. His only companion is his brother, and later one presumes half-dead brother, and you're going to get lonely. Surrounding yourself with nothing but puppets is going to ruin your day. You're going to have no peers you can talk to. You're going to have nothing that you can really get along with others with. Meaning that if you've got someone who's willing to talk to you and not treat you like the horrible, sniveling little monster that you are, and look up to you and treat you well, you might, as a petitioner to him, survive. But it is a little bit like, in fact, somebody mentioned this earlier in the chat. It's a little bit like The Boys with Homelander. You don't know if Homelander's going to kill you or not. You can't be certain. But if you get him at the right time, not only will he talk to you and be one with you, he's a deeply lonely individual who has been completely ruined by the way he was brought up. And it has left him a fractured, broken man. And Vilitch is equally a fractured, broken man in a very different way, which means that under the correct circumstances, you might survive it. So I quite like that.
Yeah, Vilitch, the thing that I find really interesting about him, and one of the reasons that I love him as a character is like, especially from my background in doing stuff in like child development, Vilitch is like a textbook of what's called of like a child from a hard place, of that Vilitch is so incapable of regulating his own emotions, and everything around him was so bad, and he was so consistently betrayed by his environment that he has no secure attachments at all. And then he was given a nuke that makes it where anyone with even the slightest brain doesn't want to be near him because he's too dangerous. And the way that you try and help children in those scenarios or people in those scenarios is by not only showing them affection, but also establishing and enforcing boundaries. But how do you do that with a creature that when you try and enforce a boundary against it, it enslaves your mind because it doesn't have the emotional capacity to take no as an answer. And that if you try and basically reject him in any way, even if it's for his own good, he immediately has flashbacks to not being allowed to be a man, not being allowed to wield a blade, not being allowed to do all these things. And he overreacts, but his overreaction is guaranteed to fucking annihilate you. And he's, in a way, he's really fucking tragic of a character. Of that Zinch or Bellicor, whoever it is, by giving him that power, completely robbed him of ever having the chance to grow into something better. Which is great. That's what Chaos does.
Yeah. I think that, as we've often said with many of the characters that we've discussed, Games Workshop has created something that when you deeply look beneath the surface of the black and white words on the page, is really affecting. It's pretty deep. It's something that could be really astonishingly effective as a tool in whichever literature you happen to use it or game you want to deploy it in, to bring some real pathos to your bad guys. He's not a good guy by any measure. He's the worst of the worst. But when you realize why he's the worst of the worst and how he got there and what he does, and he's going to be, if anything, even worse than that in practice, you got yourself a really cool villain. He's a cool villain. He's a good bad guy. And in the same way, as we said earlier, that, and I'm going to bring up the comment about it because Mornington Crescent said earlier that it was Homelander. In the same way that Homelander is a good villain, admittedly, he becomes somewhat of a cartoon pastiche by the end. But nevertheless, the core of what he was right through on that. And that's what I think Vilitch could have been, but he isn't. Let's be as clear as we can be.
No, he's not that.
He is not that. Games Workshop instead used him as a cart-him-in bad guy and had him effectively killed and just walked off the edge of the map without any resolution for his character, who he was, without any real thought for what could make a good story with that character. Meaning that it was just wasted. The whole thing is wasted. And it could have been with just the smallest tweaks along each step with almost exactly the same story. Brilliant. But isn't.
Yeah, there's a whole Vilitch is one of those characters.
That's Sale.
That's more Sale.
Much more Sale.
There's a whole thing with Vilitch of that he's one of those characters that this is not a good sign, to be clear. Of that, his characterization in Total War, you go, wow, there's so much more here. And they really don't do a lot. It's just they have such a limited time with like voice acting and stuff, but he got so little in his original writing that Total War is like, wow, they opened up his character so much. He's so interesting. And that's sad. It's always sad when you feel that way about a character.
True fact. Particularly because I quite like Vilitch. Admittedly, as I said earlier, I liked him because I had a Nurgle cart. It was very similar, but whatever. I liked him anyway.
Yeah, in Total War, they do some very cool things with his characterization. Like Total War takes what happens to him in the end times and they make that core to his character of that he's constantly screaming at his brother. And he's like, if you watch his model, his idle animations, he's slapping him and hitting him and screaming at him.
Wow.
Like he is constantly berating Tommen, and Tommen occasionally will say like a single word or just sort of grunt. Like it takes it from in the original army books, Tommen does not, it very bluntly says they are one mind. And Vilitch is the dominant personality, but Tommen is just a zombie. Like, look at that 7th edition art we had up earlier, where Tommen's literally got his tongue lolling out, and he looks like a zombie. And he's basically just dead. Where Total War takes the end times characteristic and says, no, we're gonna make Tommen his own character. And they give you there's a loading screen quote when you play a Vilitch campaign. You're like, you can see Tommen's not alive in this. He's just a shambling body. Like he looks so with his tongue out. But
totally does.
In Total War, there's a loading screen quote from an in-universe character who's this like I think it's a chaos warlord or a sorcerer that's talking about Vilitch, and he basically says you should never ever try Vilitch or try to fight him. Like you should never try to fight him. He says, but if you do, the only way I could imagine beating him is to appeal to his brother's mind, because I think there's something in there. And maybe if you appealed to it, you could allow the other mind to get the upper hand. Like they're planting that seed that the end times basically tells of that, like if you're ever doing a roleplay campaign where Vilitch is your big bad, which he would make a phenomenal big bad. Of that
really scary one.
Yeah, he's fucking terrifying, but you could just imagine there are scenes where like he loses it emotionally and he just starts weeping and screaming and like losing it. Which keep in mind, Vilitch doesn't have eyes. He can only see through his brother's eyes. Like he can't cry or do any of that stuff. He can't see the world with his own eyes. He only sees it through a puppet's eyes, which is a really fucked up thing. Like I don't even think he has ears. Like a lot of his senses come from his brother's body. He's just a mouth. And like you imagine this character you have all these running ins with, and like your best hope of beating him genuinely is either to cause him so much emotional distress that he basically loses control and then take advantage of that to try and kill him, which is a dangerous fucking ploy. Or B, you try and somehow get to Tommen to give Tommen enough agency that he can kill both of them and or Vilitch. And that is also super fucking dangerous.
Yeah, it speaks to an interesting resolution for the character, because altogether too many, particularly when you look at role-play games or how the novels resolve these things, it turns into just a fight. And this is about looking at their characters and using their character flaws against them to resolve an issue with a near godlike entity without having to resolve to blows, because if you do, it's going to win. It's a classic Warhammer Fantasy roleplay setup.
Andy, you've watched Cowboy Bebop, right?
I have watched Cowboy Bebop.
You know what Vilitch kind of reminds me? You remember the weird like phantom character, the big guy in the big suit who's basically completely fucking immortal, but he's just a child. He's literally
just a child. Yeah.
Vilitch is a lot like
that. Yeah, I can see that.
Like
now you made me want to go watch Cowboy Bebop again, which is not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. It's a great show.
I'm cool with that.
Anyway, all right, let's get the rest of these super chats because we're almost out of time.
Yeah, we are indeed.
We were at Super Arlock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that.
I appreciate it.
A little off topic, but I will be disappointed if Andy is not Thankel's voice actor for Lord of the End Times DLC, given his performance on Lawhammer. Andy would make a phenomenal Thankel. CA, call him immediately. He's just down the road.
Thanquol was so much fun to do. I love Thanquol. And if you're watching Lawhammer, you know that he's about to hit screen in about the next episode, perhaps, or the episode after.
Which is phenomenal. I will always be so thrilled that I got to my one episode. I got to have a character on there. Thanquol was I got to throw down with Thanquol, and it was great. It was
good times.
So fun. He's such a good character.
So much fun. Oh,
Timonami, thank you for becoming a member.
thank you. That's really appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. Magalo draws. Also, you're a Warhammer fan when you watch Invincible, see the Viltrumite ring around their planet thing. The Gash would be unstoppable with that. Yeah, the Viltrumites would be totally fucked against the Gash. Not even close.
True fact.
Oh, they left a whole Saturn ring of corpses just for me. How lovely. Tiponami, what do you got? Oh, thank you for the super chat as well. What do you guys think about Vilitch's AOS incarnation turned into a generic non-named character? I mean, the Curseling as a concept became very iconic, and a lot of people were like, oh, that's a very cool idea for a Chaos character. So making that into a sort of a generic gimmick, and it's like, oh, it's two-headed, kind of like you think of with like Zinch demons. Like a lot of people think of like two-headedness because of Kairos and everything. So it works. I'm always a little bummed when a special character becomes generic because obviously it just sucks all the life out of the room. It's great for modelers. It's great for people that play the tabletop game, I think. It sucks for people that really like lore.
Yeah, that's exactly where I am. What do I think of it? Not a lot. It's a lack of imagination. They had a great idea. They had a character they could have done anything with because he just walked into the magical sunset. They could have brought him back. He's one of the ones from Warhammer that actually makes sense to potentially come back into Age of Sigmar. He's someone who is terrifyingly powerful, and they could retell that story any way they wanted because there was a character flip. It wasn't well done, but they had all of the ingredients to make a really nice Zinch cake. And what did they do? They just used his model as a base value sorcerer, and it was a bit rubbish.
Thank you, Brock. Yes, Mad Periot. Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I not only didn't like it when I saw it, I was like, no, I'm co-opting that. It's one of the reasons that I said that we should use the art from Age of Sigmar for fucking Vilitch, this one, because it's better art as well, which is, if anything, even more annoying.
He has little T-Rex arms now, which I always find so stupid. That the model is goofy.
It is, but many of them are.
Yeah, I will be very blunt of that. I don't think there's been a single time they have revealed a generic version of a Warhammer Fantasy special character where I've been like, awesome.
Yeah,
Every time I've gone, that kind of sucks because that character, you've taken something that is a unique story and you've factory produced it.
Yep. And it's rubbish. It's just not the best way to use the characters that Warhammer has to offer. And it shows it just shows a lack of imagination. They could have done anything. And some of the things they did with Zinch were really cool. Look at those big, huge, pointy up, bony, eye-covered, crazy sorcerer things. They're cool. Yeah, they look a little bit like they come out of a Guillermo del Toro film. Who cares? They look amazing.
I love Guillermo del Toro films. Yeah,
me too. So I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's creepy and weird. That's brilliant. They're doing something a little bit different and they're going in a different direction. Love it. But when they're just taking something that came before and doing that with it,
yeah, I agree. It literally feels like they're like, okay, we need to release a new hero model for this edition because this Age of Sigmar, once your army comes out, it's very normal for that every edition you get one new character model and that's all you get. And for a lot of them, it's usually a fantasy character that gets upgraded to a generic, downgraded technically.
Rubbish.
They did the same thing with Seraphon. Seraphon, they said, oh, you remember Gorok? Well, Gorok's just a Sunblood now. And
rubbish.
You can mass produce him, and it's like, yeah, it's not great. I'm not a fan of it.
Nope, me neither.
Pormisia for Champion of Chaos stream. I have an idea. Let's do for each of the Mono God champs one stream, and at the end of the last one, whoever is given S and A tier for those ones could go to a final
stream. That's a lot of streams.
Yeah.
We only have so much time and we have so much to cover.
Yeah, theoretically, that is something that we could do as a fun thing. We'll play around with it. I think there's something there we could play around with. But if we were going to do that, we'd have to be really harsh about like S tier would need to be very limited. To make sure that like at the end we only end up with like 8 to 12 guys
And I'll have to do that thing that everybody always hates whenever we do one of our tier list streams, where I just start laying into shit. And whenever I lay into shit, you tend to find that the comments are always filled with, Andy, you're being too harsh. I love this thing. Andy, stop doing that. Why is Andy such a dick? Why does Andy... Andy does this because he loves the setting, and some things are better than other things. And the things that are good, he says are good. The things that are bad, he calls out for bad. And when we're doing a stream like this, we tend to go through the stories, call out a few of the bad stuff, but we move past it. We talk about how we can make it better. When we do tier lists, if something's shit, we call it out as shit. And that's rarely going to make some potential quarters of the audience happy. Particularly if I call out your favorite characters, just bullshit and terribly written. I'm like Gelt.
He's merciless. He's merciless. For me, yeah. And when it comes to add which ones, we could open a YouTube post and which champion suggests gets considered on my likes. Let's add that in a stream. So yeah, there is something I think we could do. We might be able to do more of like a gauntlet series on the Discord. That could be kind of fun. That way it doesn't eat up like just a gajillion streams. But we'll play around with it.
Yeah, we'll play around with it. We're open to the idea. We like the idea, but we are quite aware that we have limited time, and half of that limited time is spent with one or the other of us lying in bed going, why?
So accurate. It's horribly accurate.
Nurgle.
Man. Just as the stream ends, I want you to look up Jordan Roth's costume.
I've already seen it. Yeah, I've already seen it. But I'm going to do it again. See if I can get it up for that.
Well, I don't know who that is.
Seriously.
I realized that as we come into the last minute of the stream, thank you all so much for joining us. I have been Ryan Sheelander. This has been Andy Law. But I technically remembered it during the stream.
Yeah, you did. I mean, I'm going to call that a fucking win.
Whoops.
So I'm going to bring this up so you don't need to go look it up because I am aware of this. And when I saw it, I thought exactly what was suggested there by... That was Dino Man, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so let me just go grab that while I just quickly, because I think everyone should have an opportunity to see this.
Yeah, some quick announcements as Andy's getting that here at the end. Do keep in mind that in 15 minutes, 15 minutes, I will be going live on the Loremaster of Sotek channels to... Wow, that is Vilitch, but creepier almost. I don't like that. I don't like anything about that.
That's brilliant. When I saw that, I was like, oh yeah. Anyway, continue on with your announcements and I'll do a quick summary.
I don't understand fucking what's it called? What's the
people. It's called people.
Yeah, people, yeah. Some
the body is a sculpture.
It's even like almost the same stance. It's just like what if Vilitch was in love with Tommen, his sister, which would make the story so much worse. Anyway, so yes, Bashiva stream starting in 15 minutes. Please feel free to come by and join. If you want to go ahead and head over to the lobbies and stuff for that, it is already up. If you want to come join us over on the Loremaster of Sotek channel. Second of all, the Path to Glory Season 3 is getting close to starting up. As a reminder, I am officially supporting these now, and there will be rewards for people that are writing their own lore or are the most fun to play against. So if you take a super hardcore kick-ass army and everyone fucking hates playing you, then you're not going to get it. You have to be playing like fun stuff, or else people are going to be like, fuck that guy, and they're not going to vote for you. So that's going to be starting up soon. If you don't know how to play AOS, we have lots of people that are genuinely thrilled to teach new folks. And it's a perfect time to get involved. We've also got more Lorebeards, of course, coming up for the rest of this week. We've got role play tomorrow, 40K on
Wednesday.
Us on Tuesday with Tiger Warriors.
Tiger Warriors.
So we'll be doing Tiger Warriors on Tuesday, 40K on Wednesday. Thursday, we're off nominally. There will probably be another Elf God stream sometime soonish because we've got Nethu on the schedule. I just don't know exactly what day. Lawhammer on Friday.
Yes, yes! It's going to be great.
Incredibly close to the finales, the series finale. So, well, I guess season finale, technically. So, shit is hitting the fan. Also, Andy has started his Final Fantasy 14
I
journey.
have.
For those that care about that, he'll be playing tomorrow.
Probably tomorrow. I have one thing to check after the stream today to double check whether I'm free or not tomorrow. I'm hoping to be free, which means it'll either be in the morning or very late at night tomorrow, my time. I'll pop up a message over on the Lawhammer side once I know.
Great, perfect. And then next Sunday, we will be discussing the Dwarden of Age of Sigmar, which is going to start off with some hardcore slander and then get more kind as we go.
Because we kind of have to. So thank you all very much for coming. What do we say about Vilitch as an end? Vilitch is a character that Games Workshop threw out near the end of the life of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. When it was created, they didn't know it was near the end. They were creating a new Tzeentch character. And they created a Tzeentch character that was unlike the previous examples of Tzeentch. People like Egrim von Horstmann, for example, who are brilliant, true masterminds, literally architects of fate themselves, much like the greater demons that Tzeentch is known for deploying out on various battlefields, the great architects of what comes next. Vilitch was the opposite of this. Yes, he was magical, extremely magical. In fact, if we just use the words and not the rules alone, probably the most powerful Tzeentch magic user and maybe sorcerer in the world, which may seem like a stretch, but if we go with just the words, he knows every spell in the book, all of them. And he's also a really jealous and capricious idiot. He is the worst, a totally broken man whose entire childhood was being beaten, hurt, used, abused, enslaved, and terrorized until one day he is elevated and takes control over his twin brother who had done most of the terrorizing, and the pair of them then walk off as one, let's say, unit with all of the power that Tzeentch can muster behind them to go and do whatever he wants. And what does he do? He kills everything in his path. And then once he gets bored of that, he enslaves everything else, and they can do nothing to stop him. And let's just take a moment to reconsider that one more time. This is a chaos tribe in the Northern Waste. Doesn't really matter where or which one. But we do know what they're full of. Chaos lords, chaos sorcerers of extraordinary power. And they mean nothing to him. He just enslaves the lot. He then goes to war wherever he fancies. He moves through Norska, he goes into Kislev, and then eventually gets caught up with the schemes of Archaon, probably because of the manipulation of Be'lakor. And from that point onwards, he gets wrapped up into the End Times plot, where he eventually, once he fucks up in a variety of ways, because he's not that clever, walks off into the sunset with his brother, whom has been resurrected, now in control rather than Vilitch himself. That's where the character came to an end. Our stream, I think, has shown that this is a character that has surprising depth, a truly awful character that represents some very big movements and shifts in the end times, and also a character that, to the other Tzeentch special characters, would be terrifying and impossible to ignore. Terrifying because of his power, impossible to ignore because of his power, and terrifying yet again because if they try to go face to face with him or even treat with him, they will almost all lose. He is that powerful. So they're all trying to manipulate him at a distance, try and puppet the puppet master. And that's fun. It's a cool way of using the character. And it's really quite Tzeentchian in terms of how it works. This is great. Now, is this how the character was used? No, it just wasn't. This character, for all of its extraordinary power, was just used like any other disposable character that they had during the end times, and couldn't even take out a lesser Electra count of the Empire without any real magical support. So badly utilized was this character. You start having to patch up holes with needle and thread and big patches that say end times across it to try and make sense of the story that was told. But as we've always said with the end times, there is absolutely no reason that we can't readdress this material and have the same battles, the same order, the same basic setups happen, but with much more sense behind it. And that's ultimately what we can do with Vilitch. He is a character that is deeply complicated and is extraordinarily powerful. If we wish, probably more powerful than Nagash, than Teclis, than Marathi, in terms of sheer power. That terrifying, but also, at heart, a teenager. And a really not that bright one either, who is petulant and childish and broken and hurt. And the real way to deal with this guy is to win him round and make him think you're his friend. Because he's sad and he's lonely, and all he's got is the brother that he hates for a companion and a whole host of people that he puppets. A sad, lonely individual, which makes for all manner of potentially brilliant stories for how you could maybe try to win him round. Hells, it's likely he'd turn against Chaos if someone was his friend. Because he is that sad. But none of this was used. So that means it's now down to you to think of how this broken man, this absolutely horrifically powerful entity, could be used in your own games, whether that's playing online and you're just enjoying the character in Total War, or if you're playing something like a roleplay game, what could you do with this? Because this is the perfect bad guy. Because he's a bad guy you don't need to just hit with a hammer. He's a bad guy that you need to win round if you're going to have any chance at all, which means ultimately the conflict is going to be resolved with dialogue, which is what roleplay games are about, telling stories by talking to each other. He is the perfect roleplay bad guy. And that, I think, makes him brilliant.
Just Wesley's, oh fuck, he's a Zula if a Zula was done.
I mean, I don't want to say no, but
yeah. All right, that's it for us. Thank you all so much for watching. We will see you guys on Tuesday. Though please do tune into the other Lorebeard shows if you have the time. They're doing some great stuff, and we will see y'all when we see y'all. Take care. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.